Most of us don't realize it, but we are living on autopilot. We react without thinking, we snap without reflection, and we let emotions dictate our actions before we even process what's happening. But what if there was another way? Welcome to Master Your Mind, the art of responding, not reacting. Written and published by Mindful Literary. This book is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending to be unaffected by life's challenges. It's about training your mind to recognize the moment between trigger and action, the golden pause, where true power lies. Imagine having the ability to stay calm when someone pushes your buttons, to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with regret, to take control of your mind, emotions, and energy, so that no situation, no person, no unexpected challenge can shake your inner stability. Through psychology, neuroscience, and practical techniques, this book will show you how to break free from old habits, take command of your emotions, and turn chaos into clarity. If you're ready to step into the driver's seat of your own mind, let's begin. Introduction: the difference between reacting and responding. You know that feeling when someone pushes your buttons, and before you know it, you've said something you regret? We all know that feeling when someone says just the right, or should I say wrong, thing, and suddenly our emotions kick into high gear. It's like a light switch flipping. One moment you're calm, and the next, you're ready to launch into an all-out emotional tirade. Recognizing these triggers is key. It's not just about the words spoken, it's about the history, the context, and sometimes the tone. Think about it. That colleague who always brushes off your ideas, or the friend who makes jokes at your expense. Each interaction piles up like bricks, and soon enough, the slightest poke can send you over the edge. When emotions are set ablaze, there's no stopping that fiery reaction, and before you know it, you're saying things you can't take back. So, take a breath and tune into what sets you off. This awareness is the first step in rewriting the script of how you respond. Once the dust settles, what remains is often a nagging regret that sits heavy in your chest. That moment might feel fleeting, but its echoes can linger for years. Have you noticed how the snap of your tongue can lead to a cascade of hurt feelings, misunderstandings, or damaged relationships? It's like tossing a rock into a still pond. The ripples extend far beyond what you initially intended. This regret can twist into a knot of self-criticism, leaving you questioning your abilities and worth. Here's the kicker. Every time you react, you paint a picture of yourself. Do you want to be the brushfire of chaos, or the calm lake reflecting wisdom? It's a stark choice, and taking the time to process your feelings before you respond isn't just a tactic. It's a pathway back to loving and respecting yourself and ensuring that the relationships you care about don't fall victim to your unfiltered impulses. It's all about practice. When the moment arises, pause. Count to 3, take a deep breath, or visualize your best self responding in that situation. These small actions become essential tools in your toolkit for communication. They can turn what could be a regrettable flash of emotion into a moment of clarity and connection. So in those heated moments, try asking yourself, am I reacting out of passion or purpose? Your answer could be a game changer. Or when life throws a curveball, and instead of adapting, you go into panic mode. Life has a way of throwing us unexpected challenges, like a baseball pitcher who decides to throw a stunning curveball just when we think we've read the pitch perfectly. Our instinctual reaction to these curveballs often reveals more about us than we might like to admit. When faced with sudden changes, a job loss, a relationship breakdown, or a health scare, our gut response frequently leans toward panic. It's like we're trapped in quicksand, flailing around, desperately trying to find solid ground. Everyone likes to think they'll be the cool cucumber in a crisis, but let's be real. How many times have you found yourself spiraling into a whirlwind of what-ifs and can't-dos instead? There's a part of our brain that triggers primal responses, compelling us to fight, flee, or freeze. Most times, we opt for panic. In these moments, we might struggle to access our rational minds because instinct takes over, swirling all our cool logic into a chaotic mess. Panic mode might feel like a reliable friend during a crisis, but often it's more of a frenemy, loyal to a fault yet riddled with toxicity. Sure, it gets our blood pumping and alerts us to threats, but it can also muddle our thinking. When we're hit by a curveball, our body may kick into overdrive, releasing stress hormones that can cloud our judgment. We might react with irrational fears, overlooking the potential paths to resolution right in front of us. It's not all doom and gloom, though. This adrenaline rush can sometimes inject a burst of energy to tackle challenges head-on. The key lies in recognizing the signs of panic while not letting it steer the ship. I've found that grounding techniques, like deep breathing or taking a step back to assess the situation, can help shift the balance back toward clarity. Realizing that panic isn't inherently bad allows us to navigate through the storm instead of letting the storm toss us around helplessly. Next time life throws a curveball, channel that adrenaline into action. Analyze the situation and identify what you can control, rather than spiraling into chaos over what you can't. A simple tip: take a moment to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what is one small step I can take right now? That shift in perspective can make all the difference. Most people live in reaction mode, triggered by stress, emotions, and the environment. Most of us operate on autopilot, a default setting that kicks in when life hits us with stress, unexpected challenges, or just the day-to-day grind. Think of it like a well-worn groove on a vinyl record. It's easier to stay in that familiar track than to venture into uncharted territory. When a car cuts us off in traffic, a wild email from our boss flares up our anxiety, or a friend's negative comment digs under our skin, our reactions kick in faster than we can say calm down. We might yell, sulk, or feel our hearts race, and suddenly we're back in the same cycle, wondering why we feel so exhausted. What we often miss is that these automatic responses are habits, formative patterns we've built over years, a cocktail of emotions and stress that we've stirred with each experience. Recognizing this is the first crucial step toward change because habits, while powerful, are not immutable law. If we can just pause for a moment in the chaos, we might begin to see the potential for a more responsive approach. This brings us to a beautiful, if somewhat daunting, concept: awareness. Imagine walking through a field where every flower is a reaction, each one asserting itself loudly and demanding your attention. But awareness offers us the perspective of a gardener, able to discern between the weeds and the blossoms worth nurturing. It's in that moment of recognition, when we can identify the triggers, that we unlock the door to transformation. Instead of lashing out, we learn to pause, breathe, and respond with intention. This might look like replacing a knee-jerk scold with a moment of understanding, or reframing a stressful deadline as an opportunity to shine. With practice, awareness can reshape our emotional landscape. Each pause we take cultivates a deeper connection with ourselves and our environment, enabling us to respond rather than react. This isn't just about softening our edges. It's about taking active ownership of our emotional health. It's about discovering, through practice and mindfulness, a way to dance through life instead of being tossed about like a leaf in the wind. So, here's a practical tip to get started. Consider keeping a journal where you document moments when you feel triggered, what happened, what you felt, and how you reacted. Over time, you'll begin to notice patterns that emerge. Are there certain situations that reliably send you spiraling? Understanding this informs your awareness and reveals the opportunity for a different response. You'll find that breaking free from reaction mode isn't about forcing change overnight. It's about gentle, persistent evolution. Each time you pause, reflect, and choose wisely, you're not just changing your immediate response. You're redefining your path forward, one thoughtful step at a time. But there's another way: responding with clarity, calm, and power. Every day, we navigate a sea of interactions that range from mundane to profound. In this fluid dance of communication, the power of response becomes a lifeline. It's not just what we say, but how we say it that shapes our relationships and the impact we have on others. When faced with a quick-witted jab or an unexpected curveball, pausing for a moment to consider our response can transform a potential conflict into a moment of connection. Instead of reacting impulsively from a place of frustration or hurt, we step into a space of clarity. This doesn't mean we should suppress our feelings or thoughts. Rather, we should let them simmer just long enough to distill the essence of what we truly want to convey. It's this thoughtful consideration that leads to richer, more meaningful interactions. Think of it as choosing your words like a painter selects colors, creating a picture that resonates with people on deeper levels. With each careful response, we craft not only our image but the narrative of our lives, turning each encounter into an opportunity for understanding and growth. Life has a way of hurling storms our way, often when we least expect them. The secret to weathering these tempests lies in maintaining our composure. Imagine standing in the eye of a hurricane. Everything outside may be chaos, but within, you are centered, calm, and powerful. To cultivate this state, consider deep breathing as a primary tool. When we feel the pressure start to mount, taking a few slow, deliberate breaths can anchor us. Close your eyes and breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 4. Repeat this until the frantic chatter of panic quiets to a whisper. Similarly, practicing mindfulness can work wonders. It's not about sitting in silence, but about tuning in to the present moment without judgment. Let your thoughts come and go like clouds passing in the sky, allowing you to respond with intention instead of reaction. Another technique is visualization. Picture the desired outcome, the calm resolution you want to achieve, and let that image guide your response. Each of these methods helps cultivate inner peace, allowing you to face any storm not just as a victim of circumstance, but as a resilient leader in your own life. Remember, maintaining clarity, calm, and composure is like building a muscle. It's not always easy, but with practice, you can cultivate a strong foundation that allows you to respond rather than react. Each time you choose to pause and reflect, you weave new threads into the fabric of your interactions, building a tapestry rich with understanding and strength. This book is not about suppressing emotions or acting zen when things go wrong. It's about training your mind to pause, assess, and take action from a place of strength. Being real with our emotions is not just an invitation, it's a necessity for growth. Think about it. Every time you shove your feelings down, you're building a wall around yourself, blocking out the light and growth that can come from genuine understanding. Emotions are not our enemies. They are the threads that weave the fabric of our experiences, teaching us about ourselves and the world. When I allow myself to feel, to truly dive into what I'm experiencing, I find a wellspring of insight. Have you noticed how sometimes crying feels like a release? It's because emotions, like water, need to flow. When they're bottled up, they can turn toxic. By being authentic with our feelings, we give ourselves permission to explore our depths, leading to significant personal growth. Now, let's talk about the impact this authenticity has on our relationships. Imagine what happens when you express your true feelings instead of pretending everything is fine. It invites others to share their truths. Vulnerability breeds connection. When we drop the act and show our emotions, we create a safe space for others to do the same. It becomes a dance, a rhythm of honesty that fosters understanding and compassion. That's the beauty of emotional authenticity. It doesn't just transform us, it transforms our connections with those around us. This doesn't mean we have to disclose every single feeling all the time. It's about being honest when it matters most and recognizing that our feelings are valid and worth exploring. Training our minds is like lifting weights for our emotional muscles. Just as you wouldn't expect to bench press 100 pounds without some preparation, you can't expect to handle emotional turmoil with grace without putting in the time to train your mindset. Mental training is about creating the mental habits that allow us to pause, assess, and then respond from a place of strength instead of reacting out of reflex. This precise pause can mean the difference between a constructive response and an emotional outburst. Imagine a moment of distress where, instead of diving headfirst into a reaction, you take a deep breath, step back, and recognize the emotions swirling inside. This is the core of mental training, teaching yourself to slow down. One powerful technique is visualization. Picture a situation that triggers strong emotions. Rather than just waiting for a crisis to test your skills, actively visualize handling it with poise and control. This isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about cultivating the strength to engage with them constructively. You can make this a regular practice. Set aside a few moments daily to visualize not just your emotions, but also the calm responses that follow. Through this process, you're not just preparing for the storms, but also building a solid foundation that allows you to handle life's chaos with a firmer grip. Remember, just like physical training, building mental strength takes time, patience, and a bit of humor along the way. So, laugh at your missteps and learn to dance with your emotions rather than wrestle them. In this journey toward emotional mastery, keep a simple mantra in mind: pause, assess, act. Each step is crucial. It's a process, and that's perfectly okay. Embrace it like a workout. Consistency is key. The more you train your mind, the stronger you'll become, and the more effortlessly you'll navigate the complexities of your emotions. So if you're tired of feeling like your emotions run the show, let's retrain your brain, one moment at a time. Taking a moment to survey the emotional terrain, it becomes clear how deeply our feelings can dictate the course of our lives. Have you ever found yourself caught in a whirlwind of anger or sadness, feeling like a leaf in a storm? It's important to acknowledge that these emotions, while valid, can hijack our rational thought and actions. Begin this exercise by grabbing a journal or a piece of paper. Write down the most prominent emotions you've felt this past week. How did they manifest? Did you find yourself snapping at a loved one after a long day or retreating into solitude after an unexpected disappointment? Assessing these moments allows you to recognize patterns and triggers that often escape our notice amidst the chaos of everyday life. As you jot these down, try to connect the dots between the situations that incited these feelings and your subsequent reactions. This isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. Each emotion teaches us something about ourselves, serving as both a compass and a mirror. With this list in hand, step back and reflect. What emotions seem to dominate your landscape? Are they bright and warm, like the sun, or are they more tumultuous, like a brewing storm? Recognizing where your emotional energy is concentrated is the first step in taking back control. This is your opportunity to embrace the beauty of self-awareness. It's not just about accounting for feelings. It's also about unlocking the reasons behind them. This understanding forms the groundwork for your journey toward emotional intelligence and resilience. Now that you've taken an honest inventory, let's talk about commitment, specifically, your commitment to cultivate your emotional intelligence. Change doesn't happen overnight, nor does it spring from thin air. It comes from the decision to embark on this transformative journey with a heart full of intention. Think of this commitment as signing a new contract with yourself. You're promising to show up, not just for the fun parts of life, but especially for the challenging ones. This is where growth thrives. Remind yourself that it's entirely normal to yield to overwhelming feelings. We all do. What's key is how quickly you can orient yourself back to the helm of your ship. Every moment offers a chance to respond differently. Create a vision for your emotional landscape. Picture where you want to be. What does it look like to handle stress with poise rather than panic? Visualize tackling everyday challenges and transforming setbacks into setups for a comeback. By establishing a clear image of the emotional intelligence you aspire to, it becomes easier to stay motivated. Engage with this vision daily. Perhaps post reminders in visible places, or even build a ritual around it. As you immerse yourself in this change, acknowledge the small victories along the way. Recognizing when you respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively is a powerful affirmation of your commitment. Your journey isn't just about surviving the emotional roller coaster. It's about stepping off the ride, taking a deep breath, and steering your own path. Take one small action today that aligns with your commitment. Maybe it's a few moments of mindful breathing when faced with frustration, or reaching out to a friend to share how you feel instead of bottling it up. Each of these tiny steps contributes to the larger journey of retraining your brain and redefining your emotional responses. Chapter 1. Your brain on autopilot. Most of us aren't thinking. We're just running on mental habits we built years ago. Every morning, I find myself reaching for the coffee pot before even processing the day ahead. It's a small action, but it's a perfect example of the autopilot syndrome we all fall into. We have crafted so many mental habits, routine responses to life's little hiccups, that we barely think about them anymore. These habits have a way of dictating our reactions without our conscious input, making us feel like passengers in our own lives. Do you rush to answer your emails the moment you wake up, feeling the pressure before you've even had breakfast? Or perhaps you find yourself snapping at your loved ones out of frustration, not realizing that you've fallen into a pattern of reacting instead of engaging? It's fascinating and slightly terrifying how much of our daily lives are dictated by these ingrained habits, which we built as coping mechanisms or simply to sail through the day. The first step in reclaiming our lives from these mental habits is awareness. Simply noticing when you're on autopilot can be a game changer. Try keeping a journal for a week, noting when you fall into automatic reactions and how they make you feel. Those entries become your roadmap to understanding your habits. Once you're aware, you can start experimenting with disruption. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of unleashing that instinctive fury, take a deep breath. Count to 3, or even better, count backwards. By introducing this moment of pause, you interrupt the habit loop and allow yourself space to respond instead of react. Action breeds change. So, to disrupt your autopilot responses, incorporate small rituals into your daily routine. Maybe it's starting your day with a 5-minute meditation or stretching session. Or perhaps you decide to put your phone away during meals to foster deeper conversations with those around you. Each time you choose mindfulness over mindlessness, you're not just breaking a habit, you're rewiring the way you interact with the world. Keep in mind, breaking free from these habits won't happen overnight. But with a little patience and persistence, you can reclaim your mental space and transform those autopilot moments into intentional choices. Your reactions are based on old programming, childhood experiences, social conditioning, and subconscious beliefs. Our reactions often feel instinctive, like they bubble up from some deep well within us. What we may not realize is that this well is filled with the sediment of our past. Childhood experiences, social conditioning, and long-held beliefs swirled together in a chaotic mix. Think back to the first time you felt undeserving of something good. Maybe it was a sharp remark from a parent or a teasing comment from a sibling. That moment became a brick in the foundation of your emotional architecture, shaping the responses you carry into adulthood. It's poetic, really, how these early experiences craft our scripts, laying out a theater of reactions that play on repeat in our daily lives. Each time we encounter a similar situation, we often reach for those old lines, rehearsed and ingrained, without questioning their validity. This emotional programming isn't always apparent. It lurks beneath the surface, influencing our decisions, reactions, and even our relationships. Have you ever shot down a compliment without thinking, simply because you weren't taught how to accept one? That's a perfect example of how social conditioning can skew our self-perception and self-worth. Our subconscious beliefs act like filters, coloring our reality in ways we often don't recognize. But let's not dwell too long on the past. It's important to acknowledge it and then turn our gaze to the future. If these old scripts don't serve you, it's time for a rewrite. Reprogramming your mind is not just an airy-fairy concept. It's a practical process that anyone can engage in. It often begins with awareness. The next time you find yourself reacting strongly to a situation, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, why did I react that way? By peeling back the layers, you might uncover those old beliefs that shaped your response, a bit like unearthing a time capsule. From here, you can begin to question those beliefs. Are they really true? Would you hold the same belief about a friend or loved one? This practice of self-inquiry opens up a dialogue with yourself that can be both illuminating and liberating. Once you've identified those old programs, you can start to create new ones. Techniques such as visualization, affirmations, and mindfulness can help in this rewiring process. Imagine encountering a stressful situation, and instead of your usual reaction, you respond with calm. Visualize this scenario regularly. Immerse yourself in the sights and sounds and feelings of that different response. Over time, your brain starts to forge new neural pathways, slowly replacing those rusty old connections. Pair this with positive affirmations that resonate with your desired self-image. Tell yourself you're worthy, competent, and deserving of good things. It feels silly at first, but don't underestimate the power of words. They're the seeds that can grow new beliefs, blooming into a garden of new possibilities. A little practice every day can lead to transformative change, nudging you closer to the person you wish to become. Next time you feel that familiar reaction tugging at you, take a moment to breathe and choose your response. Remember, you are not your past, and your programming can be rewritten. Why your brain loves shortcuts, and how those shortcuts can get you into trouble. Your brain is a master at turning chaos into clarity. Think about it. Every day, you're bombarded with an overwhelming amount of information. Faces on the street, notifications on your phone, the chatter of people around you. It's enough to send anyone into a spiral of confusion. To cope with this, your brain employs cognitive shortcuts, often referred to as heuristics. These little mental tricks help simplify decision-making, making the complex manageable. For instance, if you've ever decided not to trust a person based solely on their attire or the way they speak, congratulations. You've just used a cognitive shortcut. Your brain makes quick judgments based on past experiences, patterns, and even stereotypes to save you time and mental energy. On a basic level, this instinct is brilliant. It helps you navigate life without having to dissect every piece of information, like a detective hunting for clues. However, this same ability can lead to oversimplifications that may distort your understanding of reality. But let's be real. Not all shortcuts are created equal, and there's a dark side to this mental efficiency. Think back to those moments when you reacted strongly in an emotional situation, maybe a heated argument with a friend or a job interview that suddenly became a nerve-wracking ordeal. Your brain, in its quest for rapid solutions, might have slapped a judgment label on the person or the situation, using a shortcut that can leave you feeling regretful. Cognitive shortcuts excel in everyday scenarios, but when emotions run high, they can become trapdoors leading to misunderstandings, hasty decisions, and regret. They draw us into assumptions that cloud our judgment and skew our perspective. In those moments of heightened emotion, stepping back becomes crucial. The next time you find yourself firing off a quick response or forming a snap judgment, pause. Allow yourself the time to sift through the complexity instead of leaping to conclusions. This practice isn't just about avoiding mistakes. It's the key to deeper understanding and better relationships. Remember, while cognitive shortcuts can be useful, they are best used with caution, especially when emotions are involved. Try implementing a simple strategy. Before you react, ask yourself a guiding question. Is this intuitive response based on solid evidence, or is it just a shortcut? By training yourself to recognize these moments, you can transform knee-jerk reactions into thoughtful responses and build a richer understanding of the world around you. Chapter 2. The Biology of Overreaction. Why do we snap when someone cuts us off in traffic? Why do arguments escalate so fast? It's a funny thing, isn't it? 1 minute, you're cruising along, humming to your favorite song, and the next, you're seeing red because someone decided to cut you off. Road rage isn't just a moment of anger. It's a perfect storm of stressors that catch us off guard. In that split second, our brains can't help but release a cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol, setting off a chain reaction. This explosive mix primes us for fight or flight. And well, most of us are way more inclined to amplify the fight part of it when we're stuck behind the wheel. What's fascinating about the psychology of road rage is how deeply it touches our sense of control. Driving is usually an exercise in autonomy. We direct our own routes and choose our own pace. But when someone disregards this unwritten rule, it's like they're crashing into our personal bubble, igniting feelings of vulnerability and defensiveness. Suddenly, the road transforms into an arena where we see ourselves not just as drivers, but as warriors defending our turf. It's a primal response. That split-second irritation morphs into a full-blown conflict because it feels dismissive, disrespectful, and frankly infuriating. Understanding these triggers can make a world of difference in how we respond to similar situations. Now, let's talk about that moment when a harmless conversation turns into a verbal boxing match. You know the feeling when a casual debate suddenly spirals into shouting, and you're left wondering how you got there. The dynamics that fuel these heated exchanges are often rooted in communication styles and the art of misunderstanding. Think about it. Emotions run high, and once we start feeling attacked, our ability to listen diminishes. Instead of hearing the other person, we become fixated on defending our position. It's almost like a dance, but instead of graceful movements, you have two people stepping on each other's toes, loud and chaotic. Next time you feel that rush of anger behind the wheel or during a heated discussion, remember, it's not just about the situation at hand, but about how you choose to respond to those underlying stressors. Practice empathy, both for yourself and others. Sometimes, all it takes is a small shift in perspective to transform chaos into calm. The fight or flight response, your nervous system's ancient survival mechanism. Imagine your brain as a finely tuned alarm system, constantly scanning your environment for potential threats. When I think about how our bodies respond to danger, it's easy to picture our ancestors, heart racing, ready to run from a lion. Honestly, it sounds dramatic, but that's exactly how it works. This ancient survival mechanism, known as the fight or flight response, is hardwired into our nervous system. It's a biological gift, crafted through millions of years of evolution. When we perceive a threat, be it a growling beast or an upcoming presentation, the hypothalamus kicks into action. It sends signals that prompt the adrenal glands to release adrenaline into the bloodstream. This rush of adrenaline can make your heart race, your palms sweat, and your senses become razor sharp. You're preparing to either fight or flee. This response is meant to be efficient, but here's the kicker. The world we live in today often misfires our internal alarm system, setting off alarms for things that don't require a response like running for your life. Fast forward to today's world where the most dangerous predators are often deadlines, social media pressures, or looming bills. It's astonishing how a Facebook notification can send us spiraling into an anxiety-ridden frenzy, much like those ancestors sweating bullets in the face of a saber-toothed tiger. When faced with these modern threats, My instinct is to react the same way, cranking up that ancient fight or flight mechanism. I have definitely experienced moments where the stress of commuting felt like escaping from that very tiger, transforming everyday situations into epic battles for survival. Unfortunately, our nervous system doesn't discriminate. A job interview can trigger the same response as an actual life or death scenario. Over time, this chronic activation of our fight or flight response can lead to burnout or anxiety disorders. We need to recognize that while the emotions can be valid, the perceived threats often don't warrant the full evacuation plan. By acknowledging this disconnect, we can start to manage our reactions, bringing a sense of clarity and control back into our lives. To navigate this intricate dance between ancient instincts and modern life, it helps to regularly check in with ourselves. Practicing mindfulness can be a game changer. Take a deep breath. Assess what's causing the stress. Is it a true danger or just a blip on the radar of life? This simple act can ground you, allowing your rational mind to step in and ease the overreactions to today's pressures, making those modern tigers much easier to manage. The amygdala hijack. Why stress shuts down your rational thinking. Amygdala hijacking is a term that vividly captures the wild ride we experience when stress takes the reins away from our rational brain. Imagine the amygdala, that little almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep in your brain, as a fire alarm. When something threatening happens, say, an unexpectedly rude comment from your boss, this alarm goes off, blaring panic signals that can drown out any logical thoughts you might otherwise have. In such moments, it's like being trapped in a storm where all your rational thinking is swept away. You might find yourself reacting impulsively, saying things you don't mean, or even freezing in place, all because your emotional brain has taken over. It's a phenomenon I've experienced more times than I care to admit, and it can feel like watching a movie of your life, completely helpless to change the plot. This reaction to stress is as primal as it is automatic. The amygdala essentially assesses threats in a fraction of a second, prioritizing speed over thoughtful analysis. While that's fantastic for escaping a saber-toothed tiger, it doesn't bode well in a modern world filled with complex interpersonal relationships and intricate problem-solving. When we perceive stress, our bodies can go into fight or flight mode. Blood rushes away from the prefrontal cortex, home to our decision-making and rational thinking capabilities, and it all adds up to a situation where we're more likely to act on impulse rather than reason. It's not just frustrating, it can set us up for failure in moments that require grace and intelligence. Now that we've laid bare the inner workings of this emotional meltdown, let's talk about regaining control. Simply recognizing that I've experienced an amygdala hijack has been my first step in reclaiming my mental clarity. The next time stress starts rearing its ugly head, I've learned to remind myself that it's just a moment, one that I can navigate consciously. One useful technique is grounding exercises. When I feel the panic rising, I pause, take a deep breath, and consciously focus on my surroundings. I might count 3 things I can see, then 3 sounds I can hear, and so on. This simple act pulls my thoughts away from the chaos and back into the present, effectively shutting down that runaway alarm. An intriguing technique called the 3-1-1 method has also served me well. When the stress hits, I take 3 deep breaths. Inhale deeply for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, then exhale for a count of 4. Afterward, I think of one positive thing I'm grateful for and consciously allow myself to absorb this feeling for a moment. This practice shifts the energy in my body and helps to remind me that my rational brain is still there, waiting to work its magic once the storm has passed. The goal is to not just survive the hijack, but to emerge from it wiser and more aware. It's about training yourself to flip that switch from chaos to calm and re-engaging the logical part of your brain before making any decisions you might regret later. How modern life tricks your brain into feeling constantly under attack. Life today is a whirlwind of noise, demands, and distractions. Just think about it. Your phone buzzes every few minutes, emails flood your inbox, and social media constantly beckons you for a quick scroll. Each ping feels like a little alarm, a reminder that there's something to be done, someone to respond to, or some news you might have missed. This ceaseless barrage creates a perpetual sense of being overwhelmed. Think of the last time you felt utterly present in a quiet moment. It's easy to lose that when we're bombarded with countless notifications and responsibilities every day. Maybe you're juggling a demanding job while trying to maintain a social life, keep up with family obligations, and still squeeze in time for self-care, whatever that means nowadays. It's no wonder that many of us feel like we're running a marathon with no finish line in sight. The coffee shop line doubles as your local support group because you realize everyone around you is experiencing the same underlying stress. These modern stressors breed a culture of hustle, often leaving us drained and anxious, buried under the weight of our own schedules, rushed from one obligation to the next without a moment to breathe. The good news is that we have the power to change our response to this chaos. It starts with recognizing the triggers that lead us to feel under attack. Identifying these stressors is just the beginning. The real magic happens when we learn to shift our mindset. Instead of reacting to every little notification or bump in the road, what if we consciously decided to pause? Consider setting boundaries around your technology, turning off notifications during dinner, or dedicating tech-free hours to reconnect with yourself or loved ones. This small act can create a sanctuary amidst the mayhem. Moreover, embracing a mindset of resilience can help. When faced with unexpected challenges, instead of reacting in panic, practice responding with curiosity. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Or how can I adapt and grow? By reframing your perceptions, you transform the fight or flight response into an opportunity for personal growth. Remember, feeling threatened is often an illusion created by our surroundings and routines. By turning down the volume on the chaos, we can find the space to think, reflect, and ultimately respond with clarity. As you move through your day, take a moment to retrain your mind. Opt for intentional actions over reactive ones. Start with a simple daily practice. Before reacting to stress, take 3 deep breaths. This tiny ritual can break the cycle of panic and help you regain your center in a world designed to throw you off balance. Chapter 3. The emotional loop that keeps you stuck. How past experiences shape present reactions. Our childhood experiences are like the grooves on a vinyl record. Depending on how deep those grooves are, they can create beautiful melodies or scratchy noise as we progress through life. The memories we formed as kids, whether joyful, painful, or mundane, have a powerful hold over how we react to situations in the present. Think about it. A seemingly simple moment, like being scolded by a parent, might instill a sense of guilt that manifests in your career by making you seek constant approval from your boss. I'm not saying your parents are to blame for every headache you experience today, but it's fascinating to consider how foundational moments shape our emotional responses long after our school days are over. When I first started digging into my own past, I found myself in a messy labyrinth of memories, each one leading to a layer of reaction I hadn't fully understood. That time in middle school, when I was laughed at for tripping in gym class, it might not have seemed significant then, but it turned into a fear of public embarrassment that still creeps up when I have to present in a meeting. Recognizing that these past experiences feed my current emotional responses helps me create a pathway toward understanding myself better. It's like being handed a cheat sheet to my reactions, one that I can use to break the cycle of unintended responses. If you take a moment to reflect on your childhood, the small moments of joy or pain can unveil patterns in your adult life that you might find surprising. Now that we've delved into the origins of our reactions, let's talk about breaking free from the chains of emotional patterns. Change is never easy, but it's like learning a dance. You stumble at first, but with practice, you can turn it into a fluid movement. Start by recognizing your triggers. This isn't about playing the blame game. Rather, it's about clocking the situations that heat up your emotional responses. Journal about your reactions. When do you feel overreactive? What specific situations draw out that deep-seated fear or frustration? Diving deep into your emotional landscape allows you to map out which memory is responsible for that knee-jerk reaction. It's your emotional GPS. Once you've identified those triggers, the next step is to create a toolkit of responses that reflect the person you want to be rather than the reactions you've always had. It might feel counterintuitive, but practice calm in the places that usually drive you to chaos. When you feel anger rising, take a step back. Breathe. Picture that 10-year-old version of you and ask, what would I tell them? Often, the wisdom of our inner child can guide us toward more productive responses. Your emotional landscape can evolve just like your taste in music. And as you practice these new responses, they become less foreign, slowly morphing into your new reality. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. The act of confronting these ingrained reactions is a step toward liberation. In every interaction, ask yourself, what would my best self do? This simple inquiry can help you break free from those emotional patterns and step into a more empowered version of yourself. As you take this journey, a practical tip is to create a mantra, a phrase you can repeat that resonates with the emotions you'd like to cultivate instead of those you'd like to leave behind. Something like, "I choose calmness in chaos." Keep reminding yourself, and soon enough, it becomes a part of your instinctual response. The role of confirmation bias. Why you always see what you expect to see. Confirmation bias is that intriguing quirk of the human brain that nudges us into seeing the world not as it is, but as we expect it to be. For instance, think about the times you've seen a news article affirming what you already believed. It felt like a validation, didn't it? The words jumped off the page, whispering sweet nothings to your entrenched viewpoints. Meanwhile, opposing views? They seemed fuzzy and less credible, like trying to focus on a distant, flickering star through a smudged lens. Our life experiences, upbringing, and social circles sculpt a map through which we navigate our thoughts and beliefs. When we come across information that aligns neatly with that map, we assimilate it as truth. But when it diverges, we often shake our heads and bow out of the conversation, convinced that we're right to do so. The trouble is, this tunnel vision can narrow not only our perspectives but also cloud our judgment, leading to choices that might not be in our best interests. Now, transforming the way you think requires a conscious awareness of this bias. It's like deciding to go for a walk on the wild side. You need to deliberately step off the well-trodden path. For a start, engage with the other side. Read opinions and articles that contradict your beliefs. It might feel uncomfortable at first, and you might experience a visceral urge to dismiss them. Resist that temptation. Instead, ask yourself why the other viewpoint exists and consider the evidence backing it. Engage in discussions with people who hold opposing views. Listen actively, not just to win an argument, but to understand. Try reflecting on your reactions. Jot down, what in this argument unsettles me? Sharing thoughts with folks who think differently might just spark a light of understanding you hadn't anticipated. Another useful trick. Keep a journal where you note your preconceived notions along with any fresh evidence you encounter. This exercise can reveal mind-boggling connections between what you once believed and what you're coming to understand. It helps rip open the canvas of your beliefs and paint it with the vibrant colors of reality. Taking a deliberate step to confront your confirmation bias isn't just enlightening, it's transformative. That's your practical tip. Make it a habit to regularly seek out and engage with material that counters your own beliefs. Challenge yourself to ask questions that probe deeper rather than just scratching the surface. There's a whole universe of viewpoints waiting to broaden your horizons, and the first step can be as simple as a click on an article that you'd normally scroll past. Trust me, you'll find wisdom in the unfamiliar. How your narrative about yourself affects how you handle situations. Are you bad at confrontation? Do you always overreact? Imagine for a moment the stories you tell yourself on a daily basis. You might think, "I'm terrible at confrontation," or "I always overreact." These internal dialogues can feel like background noise, but they have a powerful influence on how you handle situations. The way we narrate our experiences serves as a lens through which we view the world. When I catch myself saying, "I'm just not the type of person who can handle this," I realize I'm slipping into what I call the self-narrative trap. It's almost like wearing glasses that distort reality, creating a blur where clarity should be. This self-imposed narrative constrains our potential and colors our emotional responses. If I believe I'm bad at something, I subconsciously set myself up for failure. Instead of approaching challenges with curiosity, I approach them with dread. And guess what? My actions reflect those beliefs. I'm tense in conversations, my voice betrays me, and suddenly, I've confirmed my own low expectations. Awareness is the first step to breaking free from this trap. It starts with recognizing these limiting narratives for what they are. Stories we have told ourselves so often that they become facts in our minds. Acknowledging that this is merely a narrative gives us the power to change it. It's a bit like those times when I've had to confront my fear of public speaking. Initially, I'd tell myself I was terrible at it. But when I shifted my perspective and realized this was simply a narrative born from past experiences rather than a truth, I found space for growth instead of panic. Changing your internal dialogue opens new pathways for action, making room for resilience and adaptability. Transforming these limiting beliefs into empowering narratives is a journey, but oh, what a journey it is. First, It involves recognizing the negative stories that play on repeat inside our heads. When I began to challenge my own narratives, I started asking questions like, is this really true? Or what if I viewed this situation differently? Taking a moment to step back can make all the difference. After all, the narrative doesn't just dictate your reactions, it creates your reality. I began reframing my thoughts. Instead of seeing confrontation as a conflict, I began to view it as a conversation, a chance to understand and be understood. Next, I made it a practice to consciously rewrite my internal script. Instead of saying, I always panic in confrontations, I'd declare, I am learning to navigate difficult conversations with grace. This shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset invited a sense of curiosity and exploration into my life. It turned a potentially anxiety-inducing scenario into an exciting opportunity for connection. Another effective step is visualization. I would picture myself in challenging situations, calm and composed. Visualization is not just daydreaming. It's a powerful technique that prepares your brain for real-life scenarios, reinforcing the belief that you can handle whatever comes your way. The key takeaway here is that stories are powerful, but you are the author. Rewriting your narrative is not just possible, it's necessary for empowerment and growth. Start today by identifying one limiting belief you hold about yourself and consciously replace it with a positive narrative. The more you practice, the more it will shift your perspective and actions in real time. Chapter 4. The Golden Pause, Creating Space Between Trigger and Action. The Power of the Pause. Why a few seconds can change everything. In our fast-paced world, the notion of a pause may seem counterintuitive. Yet, let me share a secret I've discovered. That brief, intentional moment of silence can be a game changer. Imagine you're in a heated discussion, your mind racing with thoughts, and every word feels like a potential fire starter. Instead of responding impulsively, what if you took just 3 seconds to breathe and gather your thoughts? Those few heartbeats can create a buffer, allowing you to sift through emotions, consider the context, and respond with clarity rather than reactivity. This is what I call the golden pause. It's a powerful tool that transforms mere reactions into thoughtful responses, leading to more effective communication and decision-making. Reflecting on my own life, I can pinpoint countless instances where a well-timed pause saved me from saying something I'd later regret. In moments of stress or confrontation, the pause becomes an anchor, grounding me in the present and enabling me to see the bigger picture. You become aware of not just your own feelings, but also the emotions swirling around you. It's as if you've taken a step back from the chaotic dance of life, giving yourself the space to decide how you truly want to engage. Embracing this pause can enhance our relationships, work dynamics, and even our inner peace. The great thing is, these pauses don't require any elaborate preparation. They just need your commitment to put them into practice. Integrating pauses into your daily life doesn't have to be complicated. Start by reminding yourself of the power of a single breath. When faced with a decision or a knee-jerk response, take a deep breath and count to 3 before you act. It can feel awkward at first, like trying to dance to a rhythm no one else can hear, but trust me, you'll catch on. If you're in a conversation, you might notice the urge to fill silence with chatter. Instead, embrace it. Use that brief moment to refine your thoughts or to actively listen to the other person. Sometimes the most profound insights arise from the silence that follows a question or a particularly challenging comment. Another tip is to practice intentional pauses during your day-to-day activities. Maybe you're scrolling through social media and something triggers you. Instead of diving into a comment war, pause for a few seconds. Ask yourself, how do I want to respond? It's about creating a habit of reflection rather than reaction. Consider setting reminders on your phone to pause during your daily routine. Use these intervals to check in with yourself, reflect on what matters, and prioritize your feelings. Over time, you'll notice how these small shifts in your approach can yield larger changes in your interactions and decisions. Remember, it takes just a few seconds to change the course of a conversation, your day, or even your life. Make your pauses an integral part of your life. They aren't just moments of stillness, they're opportunities for growth and understanding. You'll soon find that those few seconds can become a powerful tool for clarity, helping you navigate the complexities of life with newfound confidence and grace. Training your brain to notice the trigger before it takes over. Awareness begins with a gentle nudge, like a soft pinch reminding you to wake from a comfortable slumber. Emotional triggers can sneak up on us, often disguised as innocuous moments, but their power can disrupt our day. I found that the first step is recognizing these triggers before they fully blossom into an emotional response. It's about sharpening that intuition, tuning into the subtle shifts in our bodies and minds. When irritation creeps in, it's not only about the phenomenon irritating you, but rather a deeper reason anchored in your past. When I feel that familiar pang of annoyance, I take a deep breath and anchor myself in the present moment, asking myself the question, what exactly is happening right now? This practice not only brings awareness, but also clarity. A tiny journal by your side can work wonders. Jot down instances where you felt triggered, the emotions that arose, and the context surrounding those moments. Over time, patterns become visible, like constellations in your emotional sky, guiding you toward understanding. As you grow in your awareness of triggers, the next step is mastering your response. This isn't about suppressing feelings. Rather, it's about being in the driver's seat of your emotional car, ready to steer instead of careening off course. A key tactic is to create a mental pause, a brief moment between stimulus and reaction. Picture it like a popcorn kernel. It needs just the right amount of heat before it pops. When a trigger presents itself, I implement a 3-second rule. I take 3 seconds to breathe and notice what is bubbling beneath the surface. Sometimes I find it helpful to silently name that feeling. I am feeling frustrated, or I feel overwhelmed. Giving the emotion a name can disarm it, reducing its power. You might even consider using visualization techniques, picturing your response as a river with many tributaries. Instead of letting the strong current pull you away, you can choose which stream to navigate. Grounding yourself in techniques like these not only helps me recognize triggers as they arise, but also empowers me to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Practicing this in quiet moments can prepare you for the bustle of daily life, bringing a sense of peace amid the chaos. The journey of training your brain to notice triggers isn't just reactive, it's also proactive. Start small, perhaps dedicating a few minutes a day to reflective journaling. As emotional awareness builds, those emotional reactions will start losing their grip, turning into an opportunity for insight rather than an avalanche of confusion. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to navigate through your emotional landscape, creating a harmonious connection between mind, body, and heart. The simple name it to tame it technique, how labeling an emotion helps you stay in control. Labeling an emotion is like flipping on a light switch in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see what's lurking in the corners, the fear, the joy, the sadness, all dressed up in their demanding shades. It's not just about slapping a label on a feeling. It's about taking a moment to acknowledge it, to give it the attention it's crying out for. The simple act of naming an emotion can transform it from an uncontrollable beast into something you can manage. You might think that emotions are just wild currents that sweep you up and drown you in their depths. But once you put a name to them, they become less of a riptide and more of a gentle stream. You gain leverage, a foothold. You tell yourself, this is anxiety, instead of I am being consumed by something I can't define. Definitions are empowering. They provide clarity where confusion used to reign. It's like finding a map in a foreign city. Suddenly, you're no longer lost. Now let's get our hands dirty. To truly harness the power of naming emotions, we need to practice. One of my favorite exercises is keeping an emotion journal. Every time a feeling washes over me, be it frustration, excitement, or that sneaky little anxiety, I write it down. I don't just label it, though. I take a moment to explore it. Why am I feeling this way? What triggered it? It's like an investigative mission. Each entry is a mini case study. Over time, you'll notice patterns. You might discover that every time your boss gives you a critical glance, your anxiety spikes. This awareness gives you the tools to prepare for those moments and, perhaps, to reshape your responses. Another technique involves a simple pause. Whenever you feel an intense emotion bubbling up, take a moment to breathe and ask, what am I feeling right now? Once named, breathe into it. Notice it without judgment. Let it settle. This practice not only grounds you, but transforms the emotion into an object of curiosity rather than a looming threat. A nifty tip to wrap up this exploration is to create a feelings chart. You can make it as colorful or minimalist as you like, but filling it with different emotional labels can help you quickly identify how you're feeling each day. It will serve as a reference point to check in with yourself. Over time, you'll not only get better at recognizing what you're feeling, but you'll also grow a bit kinder toward yourself in moments of distress. This journey isn't just about control, it's about understanding. And with understanding comes the ability to navigate life's emotional landscape with confidence, like a seasoned sailor steering through a storm. The 90-second rule: how emotions pass if you let them. Emotions can be tricksters, can't they? One moment you're riding high on a wave of joy, and the next, you feel like you're drowning in sadness. It turns out, there's a fascinating principle behind this emotional roller coaster known as the 90-second rule. Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, a neuroscientist, highlights that our physiological reactions to emotions last about 90 seconds. After that initial burst, any lingering feelings are largely products of our own minds creating stories and narratives around those emotions. Think of it as a tidal wave. If we aren't swept away by it, we can simply let it crash and recede. The beauty is in this transient nature. If we just pause and breathe, we can witness emotions come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. This realization invites us to explore how often we cling to feelings that, if we just gave them some space, would naturally pass. Now that we understand the fleeting nature of emotions, it's time to master the art of riding those waves without being tossed around. When strong feelings arise, instead of reacting impulsively, I've found that cultivating awareness plays a transformative role. Try to start by noticing when an emotion hits you. Notice the pang of anger or the flutter of anxiety. Acknowledge it. Just say to yourself, here it is. This simple act of recognition can be incredibly grounding. Alongside this, breathing techniques can work wonders. A few deep breaths. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 4. Allow us to reset our physiological state, giving us just enough time to let that emotional wave pass without getting swept away. By creating this pause, we can respond to our feelings rather than react to them, fostering a sense of control amidst the storm. So the next time you're caught in a whirlwind of emotions, remember to breathe and lean into the fluidity of your experience. Emotions, after all, are just visitors that come and go. As you practice these skills, try to integrate them into your daily life. The next time you encounter a discomforting emotion, take a moment to pause, breathe, and acknowledge the feeling without judgment. This practice can be a game changer, helping you cultivate resilience and emotional intelligence. Remember, emotions are temporary. Your awareness is what will keep you grounded through it all. Chapter 5: How to Stop Feeding the Fire. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Every day, we are bombarded with opportunities to dive into arguments, whether at work, at home, or on social media. The allure of conflict can feel tempting, almost like an invitation to dance a thrilling tango. But before you put on your dancing shoes, consider this. Not every argument deserves your time or energy. Choosing your battles is about recognizing which conversations are worth your investment and which ones are just drainers. I've learned that engaging in every disagreement is exhausting and rarely leads to any productive outcomes. Instead, focus on those rare moments when your participation could foster understanding or drive a change. Think of the issues that truly matter to you. Does this argument align with your values or goals? If it doesn't, politely decline the invitation to oppose. This selective engagement not only preserves your energy, but also enhances your credibility. You become a person of purpose, giving weight to your words only when it truly counts. Mastering the art of disengagement can be as important as knowing when to engage. Not every conversation can be salvaged, and sometimes, your best move is to gracefully exit rather than escalate. Picture this. You're in a heated discussion, and the temperature in the room rises. A simple, "I see where you're coming from, but I think we have different perspectives," can defuse a tense situation and create space for a calmer dialogue later on. Or when things get too heated, it's perfectly acceptable to excuse yourself. "I need a moment to gather my thoughts. Let's circle back to this." These phrases allow you to step away without igniting resentment. It's about mindfulness, understanding your own limits, and prioritizing your peace. Also, humor can be a fantastic ally. When tensions rise, a well-placed lighthearted joke can shift the mood, making it easier to transition out smoothly. Remember, exiting doesn't equate to losing the argument. It's about being smart with your energy and emotions. Next time the temptation of a spirited debate beckons, ask yourself, is this conflict worth my time, or am I better off sitting it out? You'll find that stepping back can lead to greater clarity and strength for the battles that truly matter. How to tell the difference between a reaction craving validation versus a response rooted in clarity. Have you ever felt that little tug in your chest when you share something and wait, almost breathlessly, for someone to react? That craving for validation, like looking for a warm hug in a cold room, can sneak up on us when we least expect it. It manifests itself in comments, likes, and the silent metric of approval from friends, family, and even strangers. The truth is, it's easy to trip into this validation trap. I've done it more times than I care to admit. When we're uncertain, we often look outside ourselves for reassurance, that little nod that tells us we're on the right path, that our choices make sense. It's the essence of being human, but it can also be a slippery slope that leads to dependency on others' opinions. Recognizing this urge is the first step. Ask yourself, am I sharing this for myself or for their applause? This moment of honesty can shine a light on the shadows of insecurity lurking behind your actions. Shifting from seeking external validation to cultivating internal clarity doesn't happen overnight. Trust me, I've had my fair share of moments where I needed that like or comment to validate my existence. But developing clarity is akin to tuning a musical instrument. It takes time, patience, and practice. Start by giving yourself permission to express your thoughts and feelings without the pressure of outside approval. Journaling can be a powerful tool here. Write down your thoughts and leave them uncensored, allowing your inner voice to unfold. Pray, meditate, or simply take a walk, whatever it is that helps you tune into yourself. When you eliminate the noise of external judgments, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. Embrace this clarity as your compass, guiding you through the fog of external demands. Surround yourself with people who uplift your spirit and share your values. When you feel grounded in your authenticity, the need for validation from the outside diminishes. Fill your responses with intention rather than seeking approval, and you'll find a new sense of peace and direction. Ultimately, the journey is about becoming your own biggest supporter. The more you practice tuning into your internal compass, the less you'll rely on outside opinions. When you notice the desire for validation creeping in, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I really want from this moment? Crafting responses from a place of clarity empowers you to interact genuinely and meaningfully, influencing not just your mindset, but also your relationships with others. Be the validation you seek. Do I want to win, or do I want peace? The question that can save relationships. The moment I began to understand the tension between wanting to win and seeking peace, everything shifted in my relationships. It's easy to fall into the trap of proving a point, to voice our opinions with a fierce passion, as if our very identities depend on it. Often, we make the mistake of equating being right with being happy. In countless conversations, I found myself at a crossroads. The desire to win an argument illuminated by the flickering light of my ego, while the path to peace pleaded for my attention with soft whispers. What I realized was that when the urgency to prove myself overshadowed the need for connection, it was a recipe for dissonance. Every time I insisted on being right, I was risking the harmony that feels like a warm blanket on a cold night. Winning a battle may feel exhilarating for a moment, but the cost is often the subtle weariness of unresolved tension lingering thereafter. Practicing peace comes with its own set of challenges, but carries a reward far outweighing the temporary thrill of victory. It shifts the focus from rigid stances to vibrant conversations that foster intimacy and understanding. Instead of clinging to arguments, I started experimenting with active listening and genuine curiosity. Imagine asking questions like, "What makes you feel that way?" Or, "Can you help me understand your perspective?" These simple yet profound inquiries can disarm tension. Instead of approaching a disagreement like a boxing match, which only leaves us battered and bruised, we can nurture these moments as opportunities to deepen our connection. Humor, too, becomes a companion in our quest for peace. Lighthearted banter can diffuse intense exchanges, making the conversation less combative and more collaborative. A practical tip that has transformed my perspective comes from the wisdom of choosing my battles wisely. Not every disagreement warrants a full-scale debate. Sometimes letting go of the need to be right opens a door to growth. Ask yourself, is this worth it? If the answer stems from a genuine desire for the relationship rather than a desire to be right, I encourage you to tread softly. The stronger your commitment to peace, the more resilient your connections will become. Peace is not an absence of conflict, but a presence of understanding and empathy. It's a skill worth nurturing and practicing every day. How silence can be the most powerful response of all. Silence often feels like a void, an absence of sound that our society tends to fill quickly with chatter and noise. Yet, in that moment of quiet, there lies an unbelievable power. Picture a heated discussion where emotions run high, perhaps even spiraling into conflict. You know how hard it is to find the right words when tensions flare. But what if, instead of jumping into the fray, you chose to remain silent? Sounds almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? But strategically using silence can shift the energy in the room, serving as a powerful tool to disrupt negative communication patterns. When I first began embracing silence, I noticed how it cut through the clamor of defensive responses and allowed space for reflection. My friends would launch into their usual complaints, and instead of interjecting my own thoughts, I leaned back and listened in silence. Suddenly, discomfort filled the air, not from me but from them. They started to reconsider their words, to question their assumptions, and to become more aware of their own emotions. My silence challenged them to dig deeper, and in doing so, it transformed the conversation. Silence can serve as a mirror, reflecting feelings and sparking more thoughtful dialogue than chaotic exchanges ever could. Mastering the art of silence doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, much like learning to ride a bike or play the piano. One exercise I found immensely valuable involves simply sitting in silence for a set period, perhaps 5 or 10 minutes. During this time, allow your thoughts to flow without judgment. Notice the urge to fill the silence with noise or words and try to quell that impulse. Each moment in silence becomes an opportunity to center yourself, reflect on your feelings, and cultivate a deeper understanding of both your internal landscape and the dynamics around you. Another engaging exercise is to participate in conversations where you consciously choose to say less than usual. Rather than coming up with an immediate response, allow pauses to arise naturally. If you're in a group setting, notice how the silence stretches. You'll often find that others feel compelled to fill it, leading to more expressive conversations and allowing ideas to develop organically. Remember, using silence purposefully is a way of being intentional with your communication. The next time you feel the urge to fill a gap with words, consider letting silence speak. That's where real conversation happens, and you'll be amazed at the insights waiting to emerge from the stillness. As you embark on your journey to embrace the power of silence, keep this in mind. Silence is not about withdrawal or avoidance. It is about engagement on a different level. Think of silence as a tool in your communication toolbox, one that can soften conflicts, nurture deeper connections, and reveal profound truths just waiting to be heard. Chapter 6: Mindfulness in the Real World, Training the Muscle of Awareness. Why mindfulness isn't about sitting on a mountain chanting OM. It's about being awake in daily life. Mindfulness, contrary to popular belief, is not just about finding a serene spot and chanting OM while perched atop a tranquil mountain. Instead, mindfulness is a way of being fully present in our everyday lives, a practice that asks us to engage deeply with what we are doing, whatever that may be. Imagine sipping your morning coffee and truly tasting it, savoring the warmth of the cup in your hands and the richness of the brew, rather than rushing through it as you scroll mindlessly on your phone. Mindfulness invites us to redefine how we experience the world around us, allowing even the simplest moments to fill our lives with meaning. Maintaining awareness in daily life is like having a magic key that unlocks the beauty hidden in the mundane. When we are awake to our experiences, we can notice the subtle shifts in our feelings, the changes in our environment, and even the gentle rhythms of our breath. It's about catching ourselves when we slip into autopilot mode, going through the motions without really engaging with the moment. This awareness is the heartbeat of mindfulness. Picture yourself in a conversation with a friend. Instead of thinking about what to say next, you simply listen. You hear not just their words, but also their emotions, their hesitations, and their laughter, allowing the connection to deepen in those unguarded moments. By cultivating this kind of presence, we transform our ordinary experiences into extraordinary revelations. So, how do we integrate mindfulness into our chaotic lives? Start with small, actionable steps. Perhaps it's using a simple technique like 5-4-3-2-1, a grounding exercise where you identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It brings you right back to the present, reminding you that life is happening here and now, not in some distant utopia of silence and stillness. Remember, Mindfulness thrives in the little details, so give yourself permission to pause and observe the beauty in the everyday chaos. Real-world mindfulness exercises. Have you ever found yourself spiraling down a rabbit hole of negative thoughts? Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting, and suddenly, your mind drifts to that embarrassing moment from your last presentation. Your pulse quickens, your palms get sweaty, and you feel a wave of self-doubt wash over you. This is where the 5-second breath check comes in, your trusty mental life raft. It's a wonderfully simple exercise that only takes 5 seconds, and the beauty of it lies in its immediacy. When you catch yourself getting caught in negative thought patterns, take a moment to pause. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4, filling your lungs completely. Hold your breath for 1 second. The world can wait. Now, exhale slowly through your mouth for another 4 seconds. As the air leaves your body, visualize those negative thoughts drifting away like leaves on a gentle stream. Do this a few times, and you'll feel your mind starting to clear. It's like hitting the reset button, bringing you back to the present, where you are more centered and calm. This quick exercise can become your secret weapon against that inner critic. Now, let's dive into body scanning for tension. Imagine you're driving a car. If you don't pay attention to the engine light, it will eventually lead to a breakdown. Our bodies work the same way. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our mental chaos that we ignore the signs our bodies give us. Tight shoulders, a clenched jaw, or a furrowed brow. Learning to recognize these signals before they escalate can be life-changing. To get started, find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down. Close your eyes and take a deep breath to ground yourself. Begin with your toes and mentally scan upward through your body. Notice any tension as you move your focus to your feet, ankles, and legs. Maybe your calves feel tight. Acknowledge that without judgment. Then continue your scan up to your hips, torso, shoulders, and finally your face. Each area may hold different levels of tension, and that's perfectly normal. Make it a practice to check in with your body like this regularly. The more you do it, the better you'll become at identifying stress as it arises. This practice isn't just about relaxation, it's about cultivating awareness. As you become more attuned to your body's sensations, you'll find it easier to manage stress before it spirals out of control. So, the next time life feels overwhelming, pause, scan your body, and send some love and relaxation into those tight spaces. It's a small yet profoundly effective way to stay anchored in the present and navigate your day with grace and poise. The awareness game, noticing triggers before they pull you in. Imagine walking through a crowded street, the noise of life buzzing around you, and yet you find this quiet spot in your mind that feels all yours. That's where the awareness game begins. It's about training your mind to notice small things that most people overlook. A flicker of an eye, the subtle shift of someone's mood, or the way the light hits a wall just right. It's like becoming the detective of your own life, piecing together clues about your reactions and those of others around you. The art of heightened observation can be cultivated with practice. I remember sitting in a cafe, sipping my coffee, and challenging myself to observe my surroundings without judgment. Who were the regulars? What expressions danced across the faces of strangers? It was enlightening to see how a simple shift in awareness could open up an entirely new narrative unfolding before me. The barista's playful banter with a customer, the woman absorbed in her book, even the child's laughter. These were all threads in the fabric of existence that often went unnoticed. Engaging in this kind of observation starts to create a kind of mental map in your mind, helping you piece together your triggers with each little insight you gather. Now that you've begun to observe the world around you, let's turn that same keen eye inward. We all have triggers, those seemingly minute events that send us spiraling into frenzy or joy. Recognizing these patterns is essential to being a player in the awareness game. Often, it's those little things like a particular tone of voice from a loved one or a specific situation at work that sends me flying towards irritation or sadness. One strategy I've found helpful is maintaining a simple trigger journal. Whenever a strong emotional reaction surfaces, I jot it down. What happened, how I felt, and any physical sensations I experienced. Over time, this can reveal trends. Do I always react the same way when my colleague interrupts me? Am I irked by the same direction of a conversation? This reflective practice helps me prepare for possible responses, turning emotional landmines into mere bumps in the road. Cultivating an awareness of your emotional landscape will not only help you navigate your feelings, but also enhance your connections to others. When we recognize our own triggers, we can become more patient and understanding with those around us. So, next time you feel that familiar swell of anger or joy, stop for a second. Take a deep breath and acknowledge the sensation. Ask yourself what provoked it. This simple act of self-inquiry can transform your experience from an automatic reaction into a conscious choice, bridging the gap between feeling and understanding. Here's a practical tip. The next time something triggers you, pause for a moment and do a quick mental scan. What physical sensations are accompanying your feelings? What thoughts are racing through your mind? By swiping through your emotional app in that moment, you'll begin to see what it means to play the awareness game, as it grants you the power to respond rather than react. Chapter 7. Responding to people who test your patience. How to deal with criticism, insults, and negativity without losing your cool. When I first encountered criticism, I remember feeling as if I'd been hit by a freight train. A wave of emotions washed over me, shock, anger, and that all too familiar feeling of self-doubt. Over the years, I learned that criticism is not merely a clobbering blow. It's an opportunity to refine my armor and emerge even stronger. The first strategy is to breathe. Sounds simple, right? But taking a few deep breaths before you respond can recalibrate your emotions. It sends a message to your brain that you are in control, even when the world feels chaotic. Count to 10, or even 20 if necessary, letting each inhale fill you with calm and each exhale release tension. Gaining perspective is another invaluable tool. Consider the source of the criticism. Is it someone whose opinion you respect, or does it come from a shadowy figure on the internet? Asking myself these questions is enlightening. Recognizing when feedback is valid allows me to digest it thoughtfully, while dismissing unwarranted attacks helps to level my emotional playing field. Lastly, sprinkle some humor into the mix. Yes, humor. Laughing at a critique, even if just to yourself, deflates its power. It can turn a potentially damaging interaction into a moment of absurdity. Embracing the ridiculous can release tension and provide a much-needed perspective shift. In the heat of a critical moment, it's easy to forget that every person walking this earth carries their own baggage. Developing empathy is a game changer. I often remind myself that harsh words aren't always about me. They may reflect the speaker's struggles. When someone hurls an insult, instead of reacting with anger, I try to picture them in a moment of vulnerability. What may have caused their bitterness? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it offers a calming perspective. As I've practiced this, I found that it grounds me and transforms negativity into a chance for compassion. Opening up a dialogue also fosters this empathetic approach. If criticism feels unjust, ask questions. A gentle, "Can you share what led you to this conclusion?" can turn a confrontation into a conversation. This gives the other person a chance to reflect and may lead to understandings that soften their initial stance. Finally, remember that it's perfectly okay to walk away. Protecting your energy is crucial. Sometimes, disengagement is the most powerful response. When faced with negativity, arm yourself with empathy, and your journey through criticism will become less about surviving the storm and more about dancing in the rain. Next time you face criticism, remember, breathe deeply, find perspective, and sprinkle in a dash of humor. And when confronted with negativity, transform it through understanding and compassion, not just towards others, but towards yourself. This is not about me. Learning to separate your ego from the moment. It's time to face the often unacknowledged truth. Our ego is a powerful entity, whispering in our ear, nudging us toward reactions that can complicate even the simplest interactions. Imagine it like a parrot perched on your shoulder, squawking out every insecurity at the most inconvenient moments. The first step to emotional mastery is recognizing this pesky companion for what it truly is. My ego, like yours, thrives on validation. It wants to be right, admired, and respected. But here's where we can turn a corner, recognizing that these desires can cloud our judgment. When we learn to step back, to disentangle ourselves from these impulses, we open up the possibility for genuine connection and understanding. Understanding the role of our ego in every experience is akin to learning to ride a bike. At first, it feels wobbly and uncertain, but as you practice, you find your balance. Instead of responding out of defensiveness or pride, consider how wonderful it is to remove that extra weight. Ask yourself, is this reaction truly about me? When I began to question my ego-driven responses, I discovered the freedom that comes with emotional detachment. It became easier to forgive, communicate, and even enjoy moments that previously rattled my nerves. The magic happens when we realize that stepping aside from our ego allows the moment to breathe, turning confrontation into conversation. In the realm of difficult conversations, reframing becomes our most trusted tool. Picture this. You've just had a disagreement with a friend. Your first instinct might be to sulk, spiral into self-pity, or even lash out, classic ego behavior. But what if we trained ourselves to pivot, to reframe that negative experience into a moment of growth? When I find myself in these situations, I remind myself that each interaction is a lesson waiting to unfold. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" I train my mind to ask, "What can this teach me?" Such a simple shift can transform your perspective from victimhood to empowerment. Techniques like visualization can help in this reframing. Imagine your displeasure as a dark cloud hovering over you. Now picture that cloud dissolving as you breathe deeply, releasing the weight of negativity. In its place, allow your mind to fill with understanding and grace. Another helpful practice is journaling. Writing down my thoughts after an altercation has helped me disentangle my emotional response from the actual facts. This reflective practice not only provides clarity, but also reveals patterns in my behavior I may not have noticed before. By reframing our perceptions, we eliminate the ego's tight grip, allowing for deeper insights and more meaningful connections. Take a moment today to practice this reframing technique. When faced with a challenging situation, consciously decide to view it as a teacher rather than an adversary. You might be surprised at how readily the lessons present themselves. How to disarm aggressive people with calm, direct energy. When faced with aggression, we often feel our own pulse quickening, the temperature rising in the room, and an urge to retaliate. But what if instead we took a deep breath and remained calm? Embracing a calm demeanor is like wielding a superpower in the face of tension. Picture it, an aggressive person confronts you, all blazing eyes and raised voices. If you mirror their energy, you're only adding fuel to the fire. Instead, by staying calm, you create a space where the intensity of the moment can dissolve rather than escalate. It's not about being passive or submissive. It's about standing firm in your inner peace. Every aggressive action demands a reaction, and a calm presence disrupts the expected cycle. I've witnessed transformative moments when, instead of reacting, I simply paused and grounded myself. The aggressor's energy shifts when they realize their flames of aggression meet a wall of tranquility. It's as if they've thrown a fireball at a water balloon. Their aggression just disperses. This is our magic wand. It disarms negativity without an aggressive counterattack. Being calm is one thing, but being direct is another layer of mastery. When I say direct energy, I mean communicating clearly and assertively, ensuring your voice is heard without sparking more conflict. There's an art to this. It's about finding the balance between softness and decisiveness. When you respond to aggression with clear intentions, it's like handing them a roadmap instead of pushing them deeper into the forest. You can be firm without raising your voice, using body language that conveys strength without threat. I remember a particularly frantic altercation, where I employed the speak softly but carry clarity method. Instead of yelling back or showing fear, I leaned forward slightly, made eye contact, and said, "I understand you're upset, but let's talk about this calmly." Those words cut through the noise. Directness, paired with calm, becomes a magnet that draws attention away from the chaos. It's about owning your space, projecting confidence, and refusing to let the energy of aggression sweep you away. Assertiveness becomes a graceful dance rather than a wrestling match, ensuring that even in conflict you can maintain your integrity. Whenever you find yourself on a rocky path of confrontation, remember that your calmness isn't just a shield, it's a powerful tool. Picture every tense moment as a chance to practice this art. Each time you choose to respond with calm and direct energy, you're not just defusing a situation, you're rewiring how you engage and interact with the world around you. To ease into this practice, consider setting a daily reminder to check in with your emotional state. When you train your mind to catch tension early, it becomes easier to embrace calmness in real-time conflicts. Let each interaction be an opportunity to refine these skills, painting your life with strokes of serenity and clarity. The secret power of mirroring and neutrality, making others feel heard without losing your center. Mirroring is more than just a party trick. It's a powerful tool in the interpersonal toolbox. When I first started using mirroring techniques, it felt like a revelation. The simplest way to explain it is to think of it as a dance of empathy. When someone shares their feelings, whether they're excited or distressed, reflecting those emotions back can create an instant connection. It's like holding a mirror up to their heart. For instance, if a friend tells you they're anxious about a big presentation, you might say something like, "It sounds like you're really feeling the pressure." This not only acknowledges their feelings, but also makes them feel validated and understood. They're no longer battling their emotions in isolation. They're in a shared emotional space with you. What I've discovered is that the nuance lies in the subtleties. Body language, tone of voice, and even facial expressions can be reflected back to help enhance the conversation. When done authentically, it creates a resonance that allows deeper dialogue to flow naturally. Engaging with someone else's emotions can sometimes feel like stepping into a tidal wave, and it's easy to get swept away. Staying neutral while you lend an ear is like being the steady lighthouse amidst a storm. The trick here is to remember your own grounding, so you don't lose your balance in the conversation. One strategy I've found effective is to visualize a calm lake within myself. No matter how turbulent the waters around me get, I focus on holding on to that center of serenity. When a friend shares their struggles, I remind myself that my role isn't to fix their problems, but to listen deeply. This way, I can engage with their feelings without letting them erode my emotional stability. Practice is essential. The more I commit to this, the more I refine my ability to remain neutral during those charged moments. With time, I began to realize that maintaining neutrality doesn't mean being distant or uncaring. It means embodying an open-hearted presence that allows others to explore their emotions freely, even as I hold space without losing myself. One practical way to enhance both mirroring and neutrality is to practice active listening. Instead of merely waiting for your turn to speak, immerse yourself in what the other person is saying. This deep engagement not only affirms their feelings, but also enriches your experience, making every interaction a shared journey rather than a solo performance. Chapter 8. Mastering Emotional Triggers. Everyone has emotional buttons, but not everyone knows what they are. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone said something, and suddenly you felt a surge of anger or sadness, even if it seemed minor? Those reactions are your emotional buttons, and learning to identify them is crucial for your personal growth. Start by reflecting on recent moments when you felt unusually upset or elated. Take a moment to jot down the specific words or actions that sparked your feelings. Was it a criticism from a colleague that set you off, or perhaps a compliment that made your day? This exercise isn't about finger-pointing or blaming others. It's about you. Take a gentle approach to this exploration. Let's say you find yourself irritated at a friend's habit of interrupting. Ask yourself why it bothers you. Perhaps it triggers past experiences of feeling unheard or disregarded. Dig deep. Sometimes the roots of our triggers reach far back into our past. Practicing mindfulness can also help. Spend quiet moments observing your emotions without judgment. Notice the physical sensations that accompany your feelings. Is your heart racing? Are your palms sweaty? This awareness can lead you to uncover those hidden buttons that may otherwise go unnoticed. Once you've got a grip on what triggers you, it's time to unravel the intricate dance of your reactions. Think of your emotional triggers as a sophisticated software program running in the background. Sometimes it crashes or misbehaves, affecting how you operate in daily life. For instance, if a particular comment pushes your button and you respond by distancing yourself from friends or snapping at loved ones, recognize that this is an automatic response. Reflect on moments when your triggers kicked in. Did you find yourself shut down or overly defensive? Now consider the long-term effects. Each time you react to triggers without awareness, they can create patterns that define your relationships, decisions, and even your self-image. It's like walking through life with blinders on, missing the beauty around you because you're so focused on what annoys you. Instead of letting triggers dictate your actions, you can start rewriting your responses. When faced with a trigger, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath, and instead of reacting instinctively, ask yourself how you truly want to respond. Allow yourself that space, and you'll find that you can choose a different path, one that aligns more with your authentic self. To train your emotional response, practice grounding techniques. When you feel a trigger arise, ground yourself in the present by noticing 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. This simple exercise can ease your racing heart and allow clarity to seep in. Remember, Awareness is the first step toward change. The better you know your emotional buttons, the more control you have over how you react when someone decides to push one of them. Embrace this journey and watch as you transform from a reactive to a proactive participant in your emotional life. How to identify your personal triggers before they control you. Identifying your personal triggers is like unveiling the hidden map of your emotional landscape. It starts with deep introspection, sitting quietly and reflecting on moments when you felt an emotional surge. Picture it. You're in a meeting and a colleague makes a dismissive comment. Next thing you know, your heart races and irritation bubbles up. That's a trigger. It's essential to recognize these raw moments and note them down. Start journaling your emotional responses, listing situations that flip your emotional switch. Seeing patterns emerge is like having your own personal GPS for emotions. You might find that certain places, specific people, or even particular times of the day ignite reactions within you. The next step is to categorize these triggers. Are they related to stress, fear, or perhaps something more complex like rejection? Understanding the root cause will help untangle tangled emotions lurking beneath the surface. It's not about placing blame. It's about shedding light on that haunting specter of emotional control. Approach this mapping as an art form. Create a visual diagram with clusters around your various emotional triggers. Use colors, doodles, or whatever speaks to you to illustrate this inner landscape. The more vivid and personal, the better. This isn't just a list, it's a reflection of you, capturing the ways you interact with the world and, more importantly, yourself. Now that you've charted your emotional landscape, it's time to equip yourself for battle with some preemptive strategies. Think of these techniques as your emotional armor. A central one is mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness teaches you to notice your feelings without judgment as they arise. Imagine you're a sentry, standing guard at the gate of your emotional reactions. When you spot a potential trigger, be it a stressful email or a sarcastic comment, you take a step back, breathe, and anchor yourself in the present moment. By doing this, you create a small pause, allowing you to respond rather than react impulsively. Another technique to keep those pesky triggers at bay is to develop an emotional toolbox. Fill this toolbox with coping mechanisms that help you regain control during heightened emotional moments. Whether it's deep breathing exercises, a calming mantra, or a quick walk around the block, find what works best for you. It's all about personalizing these strategies to fit your unique triggers. Don't forget the humor. Laughter can be incredibly grounding. When something triggers you, remind yourself that this too shall pass, often with a dose of folly that lightens your mood. In the end, it's about staying one step ahead of those triggers. Building awareness and employing coping strategies not only prepares you for when the storm hits, but it also fosters resilience. Keep practicing these techniques, and you'll transform from a passive victim of your emotions into a confident navigator of your emotional terrain. As you journey through this process, remember to celebrate small wins. Every time you recognize a trigger, that's progress. By mapping your emotional triggers and strategically preparing for them, you're not just training yourself, you're forging a new path to emotional freedom. Reframing situations, how to turn triggers into training grounds. Life throws curveballs at us all the time, and whether it's a miscommunication at work, a snide comment from a friend, or something more serious like a personal loss, these moments can trigger us in ways that feel overwhelming. Now, the knee-jerk reaction is to fight, flight, or freeze. But what if we could hit the pause button instead, creating a new space for ourselves? I'm talking about transforming these triggers into an environment for training. Just like athletes who practice under pressure, we can flip the script. When that familiar feeling arises in your chest, take a breath. Ask yourself, what's this trying to teach me? You might find that, nestled within that discomfort, there lies a golden opportunity for growth. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending everything's okay when it's not. It's about redesigning your internal landscape, reconfiguring your emotional GPS. Imagine each trigger as a mini obstacle course. Each time you face one, it's your time to shine, a chance to navigate through it, learning resilience and agility along the way. Start small, perhaps with a slight annoyance in your daily routine. Observe how you typically react. Then, play with your response. You could even keep a journal, jotting down each encounter. By developing a habit of tracking your reactions, the next time you're triggered, you're not simply responding, you're responding with intent. You're not just an entity being acted upon, you're an engaged participant in your own growth journey. Adversity is like the weight that builds muscle. Without it, we remain soft, untested, and unprepared for the heavier loads life throws our way. Embracing triggers as training grounds isn't just philosophical fluff, it's practical wisdom. When I encounter a trigger, I now think of it as a chance to practice my emotional resilience. You can do the same by reframing how you perceive these moments. Instead of viewing them solely as obstacles, consider them invitations to grow stronger. The tricky part is letting go of the expectation that everyone should react calmly and perfectly all the time. Spoiler alert, that's not realistic. It's okay to feel anger, sadness, or frustration. Those emotions are valid. But what you do with them, that can make all the difference. The three-step process for emotional mastery. Notice. Pause. Choose. Mastering your emotional responses might sound daunting, but it's really a three-step process that shifts the power back to you. The first step is to notice. This means sharpening your awareness to catch those emotional waves before they crash down on you. Think of it like being a surfer, watching the horizon for the swell of a wave. Acknowledge the emotion when it shows up: anger, sadness, excitement, or anxiety. It's like saying, "Hey there, I see you." The next step, pause, is crucial. This is where you create a space between impulse and reaction. Imagine a deep breath that draws out the tension. In this moment, you can assess how the situation triggers you and what sort of memories, beliefs, or experiences are fueling the emotional response. Finally, in the choose step, you decide how you want to respond. Instead of jumping in reaction mode, you get to operate from a place of clarity. You consciously choose an action that aligns with your values and desires. By following this process, you're not just reacting to life, you're actively participating in it. Now, let's dive into the practice. Challenges are a natural part of refining any skill, including emotional mastery. The next time an emotion hits you like a rogue wave, try to incorporate the three-step process. Perhaps during a stressful work meeting where the tension is palpable, your initial feeling might be frustration. Catch yourself. Notice it. Instead of allowing that frustration to spill over, pause before speaking. Take a deep breath or count to 5. This moment will transform the emotional landscape and prevent an angry outburst. You might even find humor in the absurdity of the situation. What's at stake really? Then, choose how you want to navigate the conversation. This could mean responding with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Another challenge might come in interpersonal relationships. When someone you care about pushes your buttons, notice the emotional trigger, pause to dissect your feelings, and then choose a response that maintains the bond rather than destroying it. Each moment presents a fresh opportunity to practice these steps. The key is to make it a habit. Weave it into the fabric of your daily life. In moments where you stumble, remember that growth is rarely linear. Emotional mastery is much like learning to ride a bike. You might wobble, but each wobble builds your balance. Keep a journal to track instances where you notice, pause, and choose. Reflecting on these moments can deepen your understanding and promote self-compassion, guiding you to articulate your authentic self amidst the chaos. The world is your practice ground. Embrace it and watch the transformation unfold. Chapter 9. The Power of Controlled Emotion. Using your feelings, not being used by them. Anger, fear, and frustration aren't bad. They're just untrained energy. Anger, fear, and frustration often come crashing into our lives like uninvited guests at a party. They're messy and loud, but, you see, they're also signs that something isn't quite right. I remember a time when I was stuck in a job that felt like quicksand. Every morning was met with dread, and frustration brewed anew as I choked down another cup of mediocre coffee. Eventually, I felt that familiar heat rise in my chest. My anger not just a byproduct of a bad day, but a signal to transform my discontent into action. These emotions aren't villains. They're our inner guides, showing us what we care about. Instead of resisting them, we can embrace them, understanding that they are natural and informative. They tell us when our boundaries have been crossed, when we're facing threats, or when our values are being overlooked. By recognizing that these feelings are part of the human experience, we can start to uncover the wisdom beneath the surface, rather than letting them rule us like chaotic marauders in our emotional landscape. Now, the real magic happens when we decide to take that energy, chaotic as it may feel, and channel it into something constructive. Remember that moment when anger ignited a fire under your feet? Use that spark. When I felt frustrated about my stagnant career, I harnessed that energy to learn new skills, pushing myself into uncomfortable but necessary territory. Channeling anger into action might mean picking up the phone to explore new opportunities or coming up with a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. When fear creeps in, don't shrink back. Let it propel you forward. I often turn my fear of failure into a homework assignment, pushing myself to tackle challenges I was hesitant about. The irony is not lost on me. These strong emotions have the potential to be our greatest motivators. Converting frustration into strategy, whether creating the ultimate to-do list or setting personal boundaries, can execute a powerful shift in our circumstances. By embracing these emotions rather than denying them, we can sculpt them into tools for our growth, a dance of self-discovery in which every step, even the missteps, lead us toward our true potential. Next time you feel anger bubbling up, fear closing in, or frustration enveloping you, remember that these sensations can be harnessed. Instead of letting them take control, pause and ask yourself how they can direct you toward a better path. Write down what's bothering you, and let that list be your battle plan to channel these emotions into meaningful action. Explore your feelings like a curator in an art gallery, finding value in each piece you observe. This isn't just a lesson, it's a practical toolkit to turn life's chaotic energy into your very own motivational fuel. How to use strong emotions as fuel for self-discipline, clarity, and action. Emotions can be a wild ride. One minute you're soaring high on joy, and the next, you're enveloped by a wave of anxiety or sadness. Instead of letting those feelings toss you around like a rag doll in a storm, you can learn to harness their energy. Imagine channeling that tumultuous sea of feelings into a powerful current, driving you toward your goals. You can train yourself to tap into the raw energy of your emotional highs and lows, directing them toward productive outcomes. When I felt overwhelmed with frustration in my early career, I learned to redirect that emotion into relentless determination. It became my fuel, propelling me to stay late at work, to push through challenges, and to tackle obstacles with the brute force of my passion. To effectively harness your emotional energy, start by identifying what you feel. Acknowledge the emotion that rises within you, be it anger, sadness, or even joy. Once you name it, dig deeper. Ask yourself why you feel this way. Is your anger rooted in an injustice you see in the world, or is your sadness linked to a personal setback? Understanding the why behind your feelings gives you a roadmap. It helps you see the energy this emotion produces. From there, you can use techniques like visualization, where you imagine your emotions transforming into light, fueling your every action. Or try grounding exercises, such as deep breathing, to anchor yourself before channeling that emotional energy into a project or task. Remember, it's not about suppressing feelings, it's about converting them into action. Once you have your emotional fuel, it's time to spin that energy into gold. Creating a plan of action is not just about listing things to do. It's about designing a strategy that aligns with the intensity of your current emotions. When I faced a crushing disappointment, it felt like I was carrying a boulder on my shoulders. Yet, I took that weight and broke it down into manageable pieces. I drafted a list of steps I could take, each one as small as it needed to be. With every tiny action, I felt lighter. So when you're fired up with emotion, take that intensity and dissect it like a puzzle. What specific actions can you take today that can turn your emotional storm into a productive outburst? Start by posing a few questions. How can I use this surge of energy now? What can I accomplish in the next hour? The right questions will guide your next steps. I've found that setting a short-term goal helps to keep your focus sharp. It's easy to get lost in the vast ocean of feelings, but a well-defined goal works like a lighthouse, guiding you back to shore. Write down your goal, create a timeline, and prioritize your actions. The moment you see those steps on paper, your emotional energy transforms from a chaotic whirlwind into a well-oiled machine ready to carry you forward. Keep in mind that every small step is progress, so don't underestimate the power of the little victories. Celebrate each one, allowing your emotions to elevate your spirit as you move closer to your goals. With every action you take, you're not just moving forward, you're reshaping your emotional landscape. Learning to channel stress into focus instead of chaos. Stress often feels like an unwelcome guest crashing the party of life, a volatile mix of anxiety and pressure that turns even the simplest tasks into monumental challenges. But what if I told you that stress could actually be your ally instead of your enemy? The first step is to stop viewing stress as a monster lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on your sanity. Instead, embrace it as a powerful motivator, a fire that fuels your passion and sharpens your focus. When you feel the familiar knots in your stomach, take a moment to breathe. Yes, I said breathe. Inhale deeply and acknowledge that this feeling isn't a signal to retreat, but a call to action. Transform that urgency into a driving force, an electric surge that propels you toward your goals. One effective method is to channel that energy into something tangible. Whether it's diving into a work project, hitting the gym, or discussing your feelings with a close friend, find an outlet that resonates with you. Consider keeping a stress journal. This isn't just about venting complaints. It's a way to harness the storm of emotions swirling in your mind. Write down what stresses you out and then flip the narrative. Ask yourself, how can this lead to growth? What opportunities lie within this chaos? You'll be surprised at how reframing these thoughts can shift your mindset from one of helplessness to empowerment. Remember, stress is simply energy waiting to be directed. Now that we've addressed stress as a motivator, let's tackle the concept of chaos, an inevitable element of life that can feel like a whirlwind swirling around us, making even the most mundane tasks feel insurmountable. Instead of succumbing to the disarray, we can create a sanctuary of order within ourselves. Begin by grounding yourself. When emotions run high, take a step back and engage in practices that calm the storm. This could be as simple as a quick meditation or a 5-minute stretch that gets the blood flowing and clears your mind. Create a system for sorting through your emotions, as cluttered thoughts often lead to chaos. I recommend using the flag it method. Whenever an intense feeling arises, flag it as either actionable, a thought to explore further, or something that simply needs to be acknowledged and released. This transforms chaos into a manageable framework where you know which emotions need addressing and which can be let go of. As you practice this, you'll discover that you're not just organizing feelings, but also refocusing your energy to concentrate on what truly matters. Ultimately, creating an organized space in your emotional landscape leads to clarity, making it easier to navigate through life's roller coaster. Find joy in the journey of making sense of it all. By approaching stress and chaos with a mindset of curiosity rather than fear, you open up pathways to new possibilities, inviting structure into what once felt overwhelming. The next time chaos tries to step in, remember that you have the power to create your own rhythm amidst the noise. As you embrace these practices, you will find that even within the storm, you can chart a course toward serenity and purpose. Consider setting aside just a few minutes a day in your busy schedule to check in with yourself. It's a small way to start turning chaos into clarity. The mindset shift. I don't control the world, but I control how I meet it. Understanding that I don't control the world, but I control how I meet it is a revolutionary shift in perspective. It means recognizing that while I can't dictate the events and circumstances that swirl around me, I possess the power to choose my responses. This is empowerment in its truest form. Imagine walking into a room where people are arguing. I could choose to join the fray, escalate the tension, or I could choose to be the calm in that storm, the whispered advice that cools tempers. This shift to being the architect of my reactions changes everything. It makes me the protagonist in my story, rather than a passive observer. I begin to see that the challenges I face are not just obstacles. They are invitations to respond with intention and insight. This journey starts with awareness. Every time I encounter a stressful situation, I can consciously take a step back and notice my triggers. What emotions rise up? Am I feeling anger, frustration, or perhaps sadness? Acknowledging these feelings does not mean I am weak. Rather, it is the first step towards empowerment. When I pause and reflect, I gain clarity. It's like adjusting the focus on a camera lens. Suddenly, I can see the full picture. This clarity is a gift that enhances my capacity to respond rather than react blindly. And in this world, reacting is the easy part. Anyone can do it. Choosing to respond, however, requires effort, practice, and a willingness to grow. To turn this insight into action, I create little exercises that train my mind to respond wisely. One such exercise involves journaling when faced with a challenging situation. Afterward, I write down my feelings and my initial reaction. Then, I ask myself a series of questions. What triggered this reaction? How could I have responded differently? Building this mental muscle is a chore, yet it's a practice that heightens my awareness and flexibility in tricky situations. I start noticing patterns in my emotions and reactions, like a detective piecing together clues about my own behavior. Even in chaotic moments, if I commit to these practices, I can learn to harness my power. This is more than just theory. It's a dynamic, ongoing journey that transforms my daily interactions. The real magic happens when I start to see not just the interactions around me, but the potential in my responses. Each day offers a new battleground where I can practice and refine my skills. So, the next time life throws a curveball, remember this. It's not the event itself that defines me, but my response to it. Chapter 10. Owning Your Energy. The people who stay calm under pressure always have the advantage. Calmness is like a steady anchor in the midst of a storm. When chaos surrounds us, those who remain composed tend to navigate the tumult with grace. I've noticed how, in moments of high pressure, our reactions can shape not only our own experiences, but also influence those around us. It's fascinating to observe. A calm person can turn a heated debate into a thoughtful discussion simply by maintaining their poise. When the air thickens with anxiety, you might be surprised by how your calm presence resonates, drawing others into a more tranquil space. This isn't just a feel-good notion. Research shows that emotional contagion happens within groups. A calm individual can soothe the nerves of the anxious and inspire confidence in the uncertain. Think about it. What do you do when faced with stress? Wouldn't you prefer a partner who helps ground the situation rather than escalate it? Having this calm advantage doesn't guarantee everything will turn out perfectly, but it does enable us to make better decisions and communicate more effectively. That's the true power of staying calm. Cultivating a presence of calm is less about suppressing your emotions and more about mastering their expression. It's a practice, like yoga for your mind. One effective way I approach this is by grounding myself in deep breathing. When I feel tension creeping in, I take a moment, just a moment, to focus on my breath. Inhale deeply through your nose, hold it, and then exhale slowly through your mouth. It's amazing how this simple act not only oxygenates your brain, but also gives your racing thoughts a chance to settle. Mindfulness also plays a pivotal role. It trains our minds to focus on the present rather than the storm swirling around us. I've found that setting aside just a few minutes each day to meditate or appreciate the little things, a blooming flower, a child's laugh, or a cozy cup of coffee, significantly boosts my overall tranquility. Engaging in physical activities, like a walk in nature or a good workout, can also be a remarkable antidote to stress. Movement frees the body from pent-up anxiety and releases feel-good endorphins. Ultimately, it boils down to consistency. The more often you prioritize these practices, the more naturally calm you will become. Start small, commit to a routine, and let those seeds of calm grow over time. One practical tip: carve out a few minutes every day to practice one calming technique. It doesn't matter which one, just start somewhere. Whether it's deep breathing, mindfulness, or simply a brief moment of gratitude, take that step. You'll discover that little by little, your calm presence will become not only a personal asset, but a profound gift to those around you. Why self-awareness is the ultimate superpower. Self-awareness is one of those elusive treasures we hear about. It sounds amazing in theory, but how do we actually get there? It's like finding the perfect jacket. When you put it on, everything just clicks. Realizing who I am and what I feel has been a game changer. It's not always easy because, let's face it, we often hide from ourselves. But once I started digging into my emotions, I unlocked a new level of clarity. Emotional intelligence, the fancy term for understanding ourselves and others, skyrockets when we know ourselves better. It's almost as if we're handed a superpower. Every time I lean into my feelings and thoughts, I gain insights that turn those awkward, clumsy conversations into authentic, deep connections. Imagine walking into a situation and sensing not just your emotions, but also the emotions of others. That's the beauty of self-awareness. It allows us to respond instead of reacting, to understand different perspectives instead of clashing. Picture your workplace or social gatherings as arenas filled with potential miscommunication. Suddenly, your superpower helps you navigate these waters. You become the calm in the storm, the mediator, the one who can bridge the gaps. That's what self-awareness can do for you. Practicing self-reflection sounds like something out of a wellness retreat brochure, but it doesn't have to feel that way. A simple journal can become your best ally. I started with just 5 minutes a day, asking myself questions like, what made me happy today? Or what frustrated me? These questions peel back the layers of our day-to-day experiences and reveal the vibrant core beneath. Over time, I found myself diving deeper and deeper, recognizing patterns in my reactions and feelings. It's a bit like building a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger you get. Another powerful technique is to record those light bulb moments after interactions or challenging situations. Think of it as your personal emotion diary, detailing how your body reacted, what your thoughts were, and crucially, why you felt the way you did. It can be humorous, too. Sometimes you'll realize you were upset over something trivial, and that's where the fun lies. If you embrace this daily practice, soon enough, you'll notice that understanding yourself isn't a burden, it's an engaging journey. Remember that self-awareness isn't a destination. It's more like a lifelong adventure. So strap in, keep reflecting, and explore the incredible landscape of your mind with relentless curiosity. Consider taking a moment each evening to jot down your key insights from the day. Not only will you boost your self-awareness, but you'll also cultivate a richer understanding of your emotional landscape over time. How your presence changes the energy of a room. Your emotional state has more power than you might realize. When you walk into a room, your feelings radiate like ripples across a pond, influencing everyone present. Have you ever noticed how a smiling friend can instantly lift your spirits, while a friend sulking in the corner can dampen the whole mood? That's the energy dynamic at play. If I'm feeling vibrant and hopeful, and I step into a gathering, people tend to mirror that energy. But if I'm anxious or grumpy, it doesn't take long for that energy to cast a shadow over the room. Each interaction we have is charged with this invisible force, and as we learn to identify and manage our emotions, we become conscious of how they impact those around us. Being an intentional energy leader means cultivating positivity so it flows naturally from you. It starts with self-reflection. Each morning, I check in with myself. How am I feeling? What emotions am I bringing to my interactions today? This simple practice helps me align my mental and emotional states with my intentions. If I'm heading into a social event, I want to arrive ready to connect and uplift. One technique that works well for me is visualization. I imagine myself surrounded by warm, bright light, setting the tone for how I wish to engage with others. Another practical tip is to practice active listening. When I genuinely pay attention to what others are saying, it creates an instant connection that elevates the room's energy. It's like a warm breeze on a summer day. People respond positively when they know they're being heard. Also, don't underestimate the power of laughter. Sharing a lighthearted story or cracking a joke can instantly shift the mood and make connections deeper. Your laughter is contagious. It can ripple through a group, enhancing openness and trust. As you train your ability to radiate positive energy, remember that it doesn't mean ignoring negative feelings. It's about processing them and choosing how they influence you. When I feel overwhelmed or frustrated, I acknowledge those feelings, find constructive ways to release them, like physical activity or journaling, and then switch back to the presence of positivity. Consider adopting a mantra or affirmation that inspires you. When you walk into a space repeating something like, "I am a source of joy," you establish a magnetic energy that others can feel. Stay mindful and practice being the energy you wish to attract. The subtle power of non-reactivity in conversations, negotiations, and leadership. In life, we often find ourselves caught in the whirlwind of emotions, especially during heated conversations or tense negotiations. The instinct to react, to fire back a response, can feel overwhelming. However, what if I told you that the true power lies not in reacting, but in the gentle art of non-reactivity? It's like standing on the shore while the storm rages, watching the waves crash but remaining untouched. This doesn't mean you become a silent observer. Instead, it allows you to assess the situation clearly, making your responses more potent and strategic. Imagine a moment when someone bursts through your office door, red-faced and ranting about a mistake. Your initial reaction might be defensiveness, or worse, anger. But by taking a beat, breathing deeply, and observing without immediate judgment, you shift the energy in the room. You've just turned a potentially explosive encounter into an opportunity for a meaningful dialogue. Non-reactivity takes practice, but it transforms you into a beacon of calm, influencing the flow of conversations and negotiations in your favor. Now that we understand the significance of non-reactivity, it's time to put it into practice. Picture this. You're in a team meeting when a colleague criticizes your recent project. Instead of snapping back, envision stepping into a role play where you consciously choose to pause. You might silently count to 5, allowing the initial shock to fade. This simple act can be a game changer. You could respond with, "I appreciate your feedback. Can you help me understand your perspective?" This pivot shifts the focus from a defensive stance to a collaborative inquiry. To further enhance this skill, consider incorporating role-playing exercises into your routine. Grab a friend or colleague and simulate high-pressure scenarios where emotions run high. Take turns playing the roles of both the antagonist and protagonist. As you practice, pay close attention to your feelings and reactions. Embrace the discomfort. It's in moments of tension that your most profound growth occurs. The more you engage with these exercises, the more naturally non-reactivity will flow into your everyday interactions, transforming not just how you communicate, but how you lead. Remember, every conversation is a dance. With practice, you can lead with grace and poise, even amidst chaos. One simple yet effective tip to kickstart your journey into non-reactivity is to establish a personal mantra for moments of emotional upheaval. This could be as simple as pause and breathe. Having this reminder in your back pocket allows you to detach from the immediate emotional surge and create space for thoughtful, impactful responses. Chapter 11. The Ultimate Training, Responding to Life Itself. Life will throw curveballs. How will you respond? Life is unpredictable, isn't it? No matter how we try to plan every little detail, curveballs have a way of sneaking up on us. I remember a time in my life when everything seemed set. The job was secure, relationships were stable, and my future looked like a well-organized puzzle. Then, out of nowhere, I was hit by a series of events that felt like a relentless tidal wave. The truth is, the universe loves to surprise us, often at the most inconvenient times. So how do we prepare ourselves? It starts with our mindset. Picture a sturdy tree bending, but not breaking in a storm. That's us, when we prepare mentally for unexpected challenges. Developing a mindset that welcomes uncertainty can change the whole game. Instead of dreading change, try to see it as an adventure. When faced with unforeseen difficulties, I've learned to pause, take a breath, and remind myself, this is an opportunity for growth. Embrace it, don't resist it. Flexibility is not just about being able to touch your toes or twist into a yoga pose. It's about adopting a fluidity in thought and action that keeps you afloat amidst chaos. I often think of a skilled dancer, moving with grace even when the music changes unexpectedly. That's the type of adaptability I strive for in my life. It means accepting that plans may shift, and that's okay. Letting go of rigid expectations can be liberating. In fact, one of the most powerful practices you can adopt is to ask yourself one question when facing an unexpected turn. What can I learn from this? When I resisted change, it felt like I was treading water in a storm. But when I embraced it, I discovered depths of creativity and resilience I never knew I had. By practicing adaptability, we don't just survive life's unpredictability, we flourish in it. So, let's become those adept dancers of life, ready to pivot when the rhythm changes, finding joy in the unexpected. Next time life throws you that inevitable curveball, remember to breathe, adapt, and look for the hidden lessons. Keeping a journal to document these experiences not only helps you reflect, but can also serve as a reminder of your growth when you face similar challenges in the future. Building resilience through mental training, self-talk, and perspective shifts. Resilience is like a muscle. It needs to be exercised regularly to grow stronger. Many of us think of resilience as an innate trait, something we either have or we don't. But what if I told you that it's more of a skill, a way of thinking that can be nurtured and developed with intention? When life throws challenges our way, we can either crumble under the weight or flex our resilience muscle, holding firm and even bouncing back. It's about training ourselves to respond to adversity with a level head, a strong sense of self, and an unwavering belief that we can navigate the uncertainties ahead. Picture yourself facing a daunting challenge, whether it's a difficult project at work or a personal loss. At that moment, your thoughts can either serve as your greatest ally or your worst enemy. When your inner voice cheers you on, you've got this. You tap into that reservoir of resilience. But it's easy to slip into self-doubt, thinking, what if I fail? This is where the workout begins. Strengthening resilience is about changing the way we talk to ourselves and shifting our perspective in the face of adversity. Imagine training for a marathon. You wouldn't just show up on race day. You'd log countless miles to prepare your body and mind. Similarly, developing resilience is a process. One powerful tool at your disposal is self-talk. It's the internal dialogue that shapes our emotions and reactions. When I catch myself spiraling into negativity, I challenge those thoughts with constructive alternatives. Instead of dwelling on, I can't do this, I shift my mantra to I'll do my best, and that's enough. This simple reframe can be the difference between feeling overwhelmed and feeling capable. Another fantastic exercise involves perspective shifts. Try this next time you're faced with a setback. Ask yourself, what's the lesson here? Or how can this experience serve me in the long run? This thought process can transform challenges into opportunities for growth. It's about taking a step back and viewing the situation through a new lens, turning obstacles into stepping stones. Incorporating these practices into your daily routine is like adding weights to your resilience training. The more you do it, the stronger you become. To kickstart this journey, take a few moments each day to journal your thoughts, focusing on both challenges and the silver linings you can find. Write down a negative thought and consciously transform it into something uplifting. Over time, you'll find that you're not just reacting differently to life's hurdles. You're competing in the resilience Olympics, and you're in it to win it. The Stoic approach: why emotional discipline makes you freer, not colder. Imagine standing on a precipice, an exhilarating, dizzying view unfolding before you. Below, life swirls in a kaleidoscope of chaos, emotions, and decisions, each demanding your attention like a street performer shouting for a coin. It's tempting to dive headfirst into that maelstrom, to be swept along by the tides of feeling. But the Stoic approach teaches me that true freedom lies not in yielding to those whims, but in mastering them. Emotional discipline creates a kind of power, a shield and a sword that enable us to navigate the tumultuous waters of our existence without capsizing. When we think of discipline, we might picture grueling routines or strict diets, places where our desires go to die. But here's where Stoicism flips the script. Instead of seeing emotional discipline as a cage, it reveals itself as a key. Emotional control doesn't freeze us, making us distant and unfeeling. Rather, it empowers us to respond to life's challenges with clarity and purpose. Think of emotions as a river running through your life. When you control the flow, you can use that energy to power mills of creativity or irrigation of connections. You steer your ship instead of being tossed by waves. Emotional discipline means I can still feel deeply, but I choose how and when to act on those feelings. I become the captain of my soul, not just a passenger aboard a storm-tossed vessel. So how do I make this philosophical treasure trove work in my everyday life? I've found the best approach is to start small and build up my practice like a muscle. Let me share a favorite technique: the daily reflection. Every evening, take a moment to review the day. I ask myself questions like, what stirred my emotions today? How did I respond? Were my reactions in line with my values? This process of self-examination reminds me that while I can't control every event, I can certainly control how I react to them. It's the ultimate emotional workout. In addition to reflection, I adopt a practice of premeditatio malorum, which is a fancy term for envisioning potential misfortunes. Sounds gloomy? Bear with me. By mentally rehearsing challenges, I prepare my mind for possible setbacks without being derailed by them. When faced with adversity, I find I have the emotional stamina to navigate it because I've already donned my armor. Lastly, embracing gratitude helps me stay grounded. Every time I feel the urge to spiral into overwhelm, I take a moment to identify 3 things I'm grateful for. This practice doesn't just boost my mood. It serves as a powerful reminder of the wealth and richness in my life, anchoring me against the stormy seas of emotion. As you embark on this journey, remember, emotional discipline is not about detachment. It's about liberation. It's about freeing yourself from the tyranny of your own passions. Like a sculptor chisels away stone to reveal a masterpiece, you too can shape your emotional life. Start by collecting tools, those small practices that resonate with you, and watch them become instruments of freedom rather than chains of restriction. The unshakable mindset. Nothing controls me unless I allow it. The truth is, the most formidable chains we carry are the ones we've forged ourselves. We often find ourselves in situations that feel beyond our control. Maybe a relationship goes sour, or work feels like an unending grind. In those moments, it's easy to slip into a mentality of helplessness. But here's the kicker: nothing controls me unless I allow it. Understanding this principle is like discovering a secret weapon against life's chaos. Claiming our power means recognizing that we have the choice to respond differently to every situation we encounter. When I realized this, it was like I was handed the keys to a new world, one where I could steer my own ship through even the stormiest waters. Now that we've established the importance of claiming our power, let's talk about cultivating mental flexibility, my favorite workout for the mind. Imagine your brain as a gym. It thrives on challenges, on bending and stretching. One of the simplest yet most effective exercises I practice is reframing. When something goes wrong, instead of wallowing in frustration, I ask myself, what can I learn from this? Or how can this make me stronger? This simple shift can turn obstacles into stepping stones. Moreover, I love writing daily gratitude lists. Sounds cliché. Perhaps, but when I focus on what I appreciate amidst chaos, I cement my autonomy. It's a gentle reminder that I can always choose my perspective. The beauty of these exercises lies in their accessibility. You can start right now, wherever you are, turning misfortune into a lesson learned. As you explore mental flexibility, consider trying mindfulness techniques. Giving yourself a few moments each day to simply breathe can help clear the fog that often clouds our judgment. Breathe in peace and release doubt. Remember, every deep breath is a reminder of your power. Regardless of the circumstances, you are steering this ship, not the waves. The world may throw curveballs at you, but don't let them define your trajectory. Keep practicing, keep stretching your mind, and you'll become unshakable in your resolve. Conclusion: calm is power. The world will always be noisy, chaotic, and unpredictable. Life is a curious blend of unexpected events, curves, and messy situations that often leave us feeling like we're in a whirlwind. Have you ever had one of those days where it seems like the universe has conspired against you? Maybe it started with a traffic jam that made you late to work, followed by a series of smaller annoyances that just added fuel to the fire. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? But what if I told you that the chaos itself is not the core problem? Understanding that external circumstances are often beyond our control can be a transformative realization. This is where we need to shift our focus, from the storm raging outside into the eye of that storm, where peace and clarity reside. We don't get to pick the challenges life throws our way, but we can choose how we respond to them. Embracing this reality can be liberating. It gives us the power to define our own reactions, rather than letting the chaos dictate our emotional state. Amid the cacophony of life, creating inner peace isn't just a lofty aspiration. It's a necessity for our well-being. Imagine finding a serene harbor, even when the oceans are restless. One way to cultivate that inner calm is through simple mindfulness practices that anchor you in the moment. Start with your breath. When everything feels overwhelming, take a moment to close your eyes and focus solely on the in and out of your breathing. This isn't about emptying your mind. It's about observing your thoughts as they flow in and out like waves. Embrace the notion that it's okay to feel everything, the good, the bad, the chaotic. Another effective technique is finding comfort in routine. Establish daily rituals, be it morning coffee in silence, a nightly gratitude journal, or even a walk in your neighborhood. Such practices add structure to your life, grounding you against the unpredictable nature of the world. And don't underestimate the power of humor. When life seems too serious, a good laugh can be the best balm for your troubled spirit. Embrace lightness wherever you can. It shifts your perspective and connects you with the joy even amid chaos. Ultimately, by learning to navigate the storms outside while nurturing a haven within, we cultivate resilience and strength that no external chaos can touch. As you embark on this journey toward inner peace, remember that it's not about finding a perfect escape from chaos, but rather developing the tools to weather any storm that comes your way. With practice and patience, creating your sanctuary of calm becomes a habit you'll lean on more and more. You might start with just a minute of mindfulness each day. Who knows? That minute might just be the seed of profound change. But the real battle is not outside, it's within your own mind. The truth is, the real battleground is not out there in the world, but right here in our minds. I remember a time when I marinated in doubt and anxiety, convinced that my emotional upheaval was a reaction to external circumstances. I'd look at my calendar and curse the stressors, work deadlines, social expectations, personal obligations, thinking if only these things changed, I would finally find peace. But here's the pivotal moment. I realized those emotional responses trace back to my interpretation of events and not the events themselves. It was like looking at the world through a foggy lens, where my perceptions dictated my experience, twisting innocent situations into monstrous stressors. Once I accepted that my emotional duels originate within, I felt a shift, as if I'd finally taken the metaphorical wheel. I stopped being a passive passenger in my life and became the driver. Emotions are valid, but they're rooted in thoughts created by my beliefs and experiences. Learning to recognize that led to a powerful breakthrough, and I invite you to search for your own too. Reflect on your reactions. Are you responding to life or merely your thought patterns? Understanding this is the first victory in mastering the chaos of our inner world. If I had $1 for every time I engaged in a mental wrestling match, I'd be a rich person, yet not necessarily wiser. Letting my thoughts run wild can feel like having a narcissistic parrot on my shoulder, squawking negativity at high decibels. However, I learned that I can train that pesky parrot to sing a different tune. This requires compassion towards myself and the desire to grow, and it starts with a simple strategy: mindfulness. Take a moment each day to check in with your inner dialogue. Are you your biggest supporter or your harshest critic? Delve into the depths of your thoughts. Notice them without judgment. Acknowledge their presence, but don't let them hijack your mood or decisions. This mental playground needs a wise zookeeper to ensure all is peaceful and balanced. I found journaling to be my cathartic release. Putting thoughts onto paper helps clarify that inner chatter and gives me the chance to rewrite the script, moving from self-doubt to self-affirmation. Set aside a few minutes daily just to reflect. The weight it lifts can be transformational. Switch the narrative from "I can't" to "I am learning how to." Surround yourself with affirmations that mirror your worth, your dreams, and your desires. This shift in perspective, albeit challenging initially, can create ripples of change throughout every inch of your being. Feel the freedom in retelling your story, one thought at a time, and remember, you have the power to shape your internal landscape. Begin by practicing gratitude daily, reflecting on what lifts you up rather than what weighs you down. This small shift contributes significantly to transforming your mental environment, making each day a little brighter and more hopeful. By training yourself to pause, breathe, and respond instead of react, you become the master of your reality. Mastering your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It requires training, much like preparing for a marathon. Every time I felt a wave of frustration or anxiety hitting me, I learned to hit the pause button. The goal was simple. Instead of letting my emotions hijack my day, I focused on creating a space between the trigger and my response. This pause became my secret weapon. It allowed me to breathe deeply, letting oxygen flood my system while my racing thoughts slowed down. In those moments, I was no longer just a reactor. I became the chooser of my responses. Developing this practice took consistency and a bit of humor. There are days when the emotions sneak up on you like trained ninjas, unexpected and sharp. But the more I trained myself to recognize these emotions as visitors rather than permanent residents, the more powerful I felt. How do I do this? I started setting aside time each day for mindfulness exercises. Even a few breaths taken consciously can shift the narrative in my head from panic to presence. Each training session, whether it was a 5-minute meditation or a focused reflection, brought me closer to mastery over my emotional landscape. The process can feel slow, but eventually, it all just clicks. Your reality begins with how you choose to perceive and respond to it. When I realized this, everything changed. The power of mindful responses is like magic. It's transformative and almost poetic in nature. Each decision you make to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively creates ripples in your reality. Maybe it's that little voice in your head that tells you, "Hey, pause before saying that," or the calm reminder to breathe before diving into conflict. These moments add up to a profound shift in your daily experience. This is not a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice. Emotional mastery isn't a destination. It's a winding road, sometimes a bumpy one, that stretches into the horizon. It's tempting to think that if we just read a few self-help books or take a couple of workshops, we can achieve emotional peace. But let's be real. It's more akin to training for a marathon than finishing a sprint. I've often found myself pumped up at the beginning of a new journey, expecting immediate results, only to realize that true transformation takes time and effort. Every twist and turn teaches us something new about ourselves: patience, resilience, and the need to be kind to ourselves through the process. So, let's embrace the idea of being a lifelong student of our own emotions, where learning and growing become part of who we are. Imagine mastering your emotions as an artist perfecting their craft, each brushstroke adding depth to your life's canvas. Crafting a personalized practice map is your ticket to navigating this ongoing journey. It's about laying the foundation with intention and commitment. Think of it as creating a routine that feels less like a chore and more like a soothing balm for your soul. Start by identifying small daily rituals that resonate with you. Maybe it's journaling your thoughts each morning, meditating for 5 minutes, or practicing gratitude before bed. Whatever it is, it should spark joy or reflection. Over time, these tiny seeds of practice will blossom into profound growth. Allow flexibility in your map. Life will inevitably toss curveballs your way, and that's perfectly okay. The beauty lies in your willingness to adapt, to find new ways to connect with your emotions. Commit to revisiting and revising your practice map regularly, as your needs will evolve just as you will. Remember, this isn't a checklist. It's an evolving masterpiece that reflects your journey toward emotional mastery. A practical tip to keep you grounded: don't try to do everything at once. Choose 1 or 2 practices to integrate into your daily routine and gradually expand from there. Consistency, not intensity, is key in building a sustainable practice. The question is, will you train or will you stay on autopilot? The moment we realize we are on autopilot can feel like a splash of cold water on a sunny day. You wake up, go through the same motions, and suddenly, days turn into months. It's easy to coast along, allowing life to happen to us instead of making life happen for us. The choice between training, pushing ourselves to grow, and letting complacency take the wheel is a powerful one. What if you chose growth? What if today was the day you decided to pick up the weights of emotional mastery instead of just lounging on the couch of comfort? I can tell you from experience that this decision isn't always easy. It often requires stepping outside your comfort zone. But each moment we choose to embrace discomfort is a building block towards a more fulfilling and vibrant life. You'll find that with every small decision to stretch, to reach, and to learn, you're reclaiming your narrative. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a commitment to waking up and being intentional with your choices. Suddenly, the mundane begins to sparkle as you recognize the power of your decisions. Getting started on this journey doesn't need to feel overwhelming. It can be as simple as carrying a little notebook with you, jotting down moments when you feel triggered or uncomfortable. This is not just a diary of complaints. It's a training manual for emotional awareness. Through these notes, you'll unearth patterns, those pesky triggers that throw you off course. Reflecting on these entries will help you identify the emotions tied to these moments. Do you feel anxious when your boss gives you feedback? Or perhaps you're irritable when your partner asks for help? Acknowledging these feelings is step 1. The next phase is to respond differently. Experiment with techniques like deep breathing or counting to 10 before reacting. Find time to meditate or engage in mindfulness practices. Even a few minutes can wake up your senses to the present moment. Lastly, surround yourself with people who challenge and inspire you. Emotional mastery is not a solo act. Share your journey and allow others to witness and support your growth. Remember, every bit of effort you invest in understanding and shaping your emotions is a step toward incredible personal power. You don't just read this, train yourself to live it. Use that discomfort as fuel and watch how your world expands. Life will never stop testing you. People will frustrate you. Unexpected situations will arise. Challenges will come. But the real battle is not out there, it's within your own mind. The difference between those who are consumed by stress and those who thrive in adversity is simple: mastery over reaction. You now hold the tools to take control. To pause instead of explode, to respond instead of react, to stay grounded when everything else is shifting. But mastery isn't achieved overnight. It's a practice, a discipline, a choice you make every day. So the question is, will you train or will you stay on autopilot? Because the truth is, calm is power. And the moment you claim it, the world no longer controls you. You control how you meet the world.